People reject truth first, then adjust quietly later. People reject truth first, then adjust quietly later, because truth often feels like an attack before it becomes a lesson. When someone hears something that exposes their weakness, their mistake, their denial, or the part of life they have been avoiding, their first reaction is rarely calm acceptance. They defend themselves, they explain too much, they laugh it off, they change the subject. Sometimes they even attack the person who said it. Not because the truth is wrong, but because it touched something they were not emotionally ready to face. Human beings protect the stories that make them feel safe. A person can stay loyal to a belief, a relationship, a habit, or a version of themselves that is quietly damaging them, simply because it feels familiar. So when truth enters, it does not only challenge their opinion, it challenges their identity. It says, maybe the thing you have been defending is the same thing keeping you stuck. That is why people often reject advice, warnings, feedback, and obvious signs at first. But the strange part is this. Even after rejecting the truth, people often begin to change. They may act like your words meant nothing, but later they start observing themselves. They may dismiss you in public, then replay your words in private. They may deny the truth emotionally, while quietly adjusting to it mentally. This is why truth does not always need an immediate reaction to be powerful. Sometimes, the deepest truths do not win through arguments. They sit quietly inside a person until pride becomes tired, denial becomes expensive, and reality becomes too loud to ignore. People fear change because it kills an old identity. People fear change because it does not only ask them to do something new, it asks them to stop being someone old. That is the part most people never admit. They say they are afraid of failing, starting over, being judged, losing comfort, or making the wrong decision. But underneath all of that is a deeper fear. Who will I be if I no longer live the way I used to live? Every habit, even a harmful one, gives a person an identity. The angry person knows how to live as the angry one. The overgiver knows how to live as the needed one. The procrastinator knows how to live as the one who will start someday. The person stuck in pain knows how to live as the wounded one. Even when these identities hurt, they feel familiar, and familiarity can feel safer than freedom. This is why people often stay in places, patterns, relationships, and behaviors that clearly drain them. Change would force them to meet a version of themselves they have not practiced becoming yet. It would mean losing the excuses, the sympathy, the predictable pain, and the old story that explained everything. A person may want a better life, but still grieve the self they must leave behind to receive it. That grief can look like laziness, confusion, fear, anger, or delay. They are not always avoiding progress. Sometimes they are mourning an identity that once protected them. This is why real change feels uncomfortable before it feels powerful. It is not just growth. It is a quiet death of who you were before life allows you to become who you are ready to be. Pain feels safer when it has a story. Pain feels safer when it has a story because the human mind does not only suffer from what happened, it suffers more when it cannot explain why it happened. A person can survive disappointment, betrayal, rejection, failure, or loss, but what often breaks them deeper is the unanswered question behind it. Why did this happen to me? Why did they treat me that way? What does this say about my worth? So the mind begins to build a story, not always because the story is true, but because it gives the pain a shape. This is why people sometimes hold tightly to painful explanations. They may tell themselves they were not good enough, they were too trusting, they were cursed, they always lose, or people always leave. These stories hurt, but they also create a strange kind of order. The pain no longer feels random. It now has a reason, a pattern, a name. And to the mind, even a painful explanation can feel safer than no explanation at all. The danger is that some stories do not heal the wound, they protect it. A person can become loyal to a version of pain that keeps them trapped because letting go of the story would mean facing uncertainty again. It would mean admitting that not everything had a clean reason, not everyone gives closure, and not every wound can be understood before it is released. That is why people sometimes defend the same story that is hurting them. Without it, they would have to stand in the raw truth of what happened. Pain with a story feels controlled. Pain without a story feels like falling. But healing often begins when a person stops needing the story to make the pain feel safe. The ego prefers familiar problems to strange solutions. The ego prefers familiar problems to strange solutions because familiar problems allow a person to keep feeling like themselves. A problem may be painful, draining, embarrassing, or repetitive, but if someone has lived with it long enough, it becomes part of their inner world. They know how to complain about it. They know how to explain it. They know how to survive it. They know what role to play inside it. But a solution, especially a new one, threatens that entire system. This is why people can stay stuck even when help is available. They may say they want peace, growth, love, discipline, healing, or a better life, but when the solution appears, they resist it, they question it, they delay it, they call it unrealistic, they say it is too hard, too late, too different, or not for people like them. The truth is not always that the solution is impossible. Sometimes the solution is simply unfamiliar, and the ego mistakes unfamiliarity for danger. A familiar problem gives the ego control. It lets a person say, "This is just how I am. This always happens to me. Nothing ever changes." Those statements may sound helpless, but they also protect identity. They remove responsibility. They keep the person inside a story they already know how to defend. A strange solution demands a new self. It asks the person to think differently, act differently, risk being seen differently, and lose the comfort of old excuses. That is why growth can feel threatening even when it is good. The ego would rather suffer in a known prison than walk into an unknown freedom, because at least the prison has familiar walls. Some people call numbness peace. Some people call numbness peace because they have spent so long surviving emotional storms that the absence of feeling seems like healing. When a person has been hurt repeatedly, disappointed deeply, or forced to stay strong for too long, the heart can begin to shut down. Not because the pain is gone, but because the body and mind are tired of carrying it at full volume. So they stop reacting, they stop expecting, they stop hoping too loudly, they stop explaining themselves. From the outside, it may look like calmness, but inside, it may only be emotional exhaustion wearing the mask of peace. True peace is alive. It can feel joy, sadness, love, grief, excitement, and disappointment without being destroyed by them. Numbness is different. Numbness says, "I do not care," when the deeper truth may be, "I cared so much that I had to stop feeling to survive." It is not freedom. It is protection. It is the nervous system lowering the volume because the soul no longer trusts life to be gentle. This is why some people mistake emotional distance for maturity. They think they have moved on because they no longer cry. They think they are healed because nothing shocks them anymore. They think they are strong because they can walk away without shaking. But sometimes they are not healed. They are disconnected. The painful part is that numbness can feel safe because it protects people from disappointment. But it also blocks tenderness, connection, and joy. A heart that refuses to feel pain will eventually struggle to feel love fully. Real peace is not the absence of emotion, it is the ability to feel without losing yourself. Many do not want advice, only permission. Many do not want advice, only permission, because deep down, they often already know what they want to do. They are not always confused because they lack answers. Sometimes they are confused because they are afraid of owning the answer they already have. So they ask different people the same question, hoping someone will finally say the thing their heart has been waiting to hear. They call it guidance, but often it is approval in disguise. This happens because decisions carry emotional risk. If a person chooses alone and things go wrong, they must face the weight of responsibility. But if someone else approves the choice, the burden feels lighter. They can tell themselves, "At least someone understood me. At least someone said I was not wrong." Permission makes the decision feel less lonely. That is why people sometimes reject good advice that does not match what they secretly want. You may give them a wise answer, a practical warning, or a clear truth, but if it does not support the decision they are emotionally attached to, they will keep searching. They are not really looking for the best answer. They are looking for the answer that gives them emotional relief. This is especially common in love, friendship, family, and personal growth. A person may ask if they should leave, forgive, speak up, start over, set a boundary, or stop waiting. But beneath the question is often a silent request. Tell me I am allowed to choose myself. The powerful thing is that permission does not always have to come from another person. Sometimes healing begins when someone finally stops asking the world to approve what their own soul has been whispering for a long time. Jealousy often hides behind concern or criticism. Jealousy often hides behind concern or criticism because most people do not want to admit when someone else's progress, beauty, confidence, success, peace, or attention makes them uncomfortable. It is painful for the ego to say, I feel threatened by what you have. So instead, jealousy puts on a cleaner mask. It becomes advice. It becomes warning. It becomes sarcasm. It becomes, I'm only saying this because I care. But underneath that concern may be a quiet discomfort they do not know how to confess. This is why some people suddenly become critical when you begin to grow. When you start looking better, they say you are trying too hard. When you become confident, they say you have changed. When you set boundaries, they say you are becoming proud. When you chase a dream, they remind you of everything that could go wrong. On the surface, it sounds like caution, but sometimes it is not caution. It is fear that you are becoming someone they can no longer quietly compare themselves to. Real concern feels protective without shrinking you. Jealous concern makes you doubt yourself. Real advice gives you clarity. Jealous criticism leaves you feeling guilty for wanting more. That is the difference many people miss. Not everyone who questions you hates you, but not everyone who questions you is trying to help either. The most dangerous jealousy is not always loud. It is often subtle, dressed in reasonable words, spoken with a calm face, and hidden inside comments that make you feel small. That is why you must learn to hear the emotion behind the sentence. Sometimes, criticism is not a warning about your path. Sometimes, it is a confession of someone else's insecurity watching you rise. Certainty often protects hidden fear. Certainty often protects hidden fear because many people use strong opinions as emotional armor. When someone sounds completely sure, unshakable, and unwilling to consider another side, it may look like confidence. But sometimes it is fear standing very still. The person is not always certain because they have examined the truth deeply. Sometimes they are certain because doubt feels too dangerous to allow. Human beings like to feel stable. Doubt shakes that stability. It forces a person to question what they believe, who they trust, what they chose, and whether the life they defended was built on something weaker than they wanted to admit. So instead of saying, I am afraid this might not be true, they say, I know I am right. Instead of exploring uncertainty, they shut the door before uncertainty can enter. This is why some people become aggressive when questioned. The question itself touches the fear underneath their certainty. They may raise their voice, mock the other person, dismiss facts, or act offended, not because they are strong, but because they feel exposed. Their certainty is not always a sign of wisdom. Sometimes it is a wall built around a wound. You see this in relationships, beliefs, habits, and identity. A person may insist they do not care when they are terrified of being hurt. They may insist they are happy when they are scared to admit they feel empty. They may insist they know what they are doing when they are afraid of facing how lost they feel. Real confidence can sit with questions. Fearful certainty cannot. It needs to win quickly, defend loudly, and silence anything that threatens the story keeping it safe. That is why the loudest certainty often hides the quietest fear. People stay loyal to versions that hurt them. People stay loyal to versions that hurt them because the self they know can feel safer than the self they have not become yet. A person may be tired of their habits, their reactions, their fear, their anger, their silence, or their need to please everyone, but still return to the same patterns because those patterns feel familiar. Even pain can become part of identity when it has lived inside someone long enough. This is why change is not only about discipline, it is about grief. To become different, a person must sometimes let go of the version of themselves that helped them survive. The overthinker may hate being mentally exhausted, but overthinking once made them feel prepared. The people pleaser may hate feeling used, but pleasing others once helped them feel safe. The guarded person may hate feeling lonely, but emotional distance once protected them from disappointment. So they stay loyal, not because the old version is good for them, but because it feels known. That version has a story. It has excuses, it has memories, it has proof of why it exists. Leaving it can feel like betraying everything they once needed to survive. The painful truth is that people can defend the very identity that keeps them trapped. They may say, "This is just how I am," when really, it is how pain trained them to be. They may reject growth because growth feels like abandoning the wounded self that carried them through difficult seasons. Healing begins when a person realizes they can honor the old version without obeying it forever. You can respect who you became to survive, while still refusing to let that version control the life you are trying to build now. People may dislike what your freedom exposes. People may dislike what your freedom exposes because your choices can quietly remind them of the choices they never made. When someone sees you living with confidence, setting boundaries, chasing a dream, leaving an unhealthy relationship, speaking your mind, or refusing to settle, they are not only seeing your life, they are also seeing the parts of their own life they have ignored. That comparison is often uncomfortable, even if they never admit it. Most people believe they judge others objectively, but emotions rarely work that way. Sometimes they criticize your courage because it highlights their fear. Sometimes they mock your ambition because it reminds them of dreams they abandoned. Sometimes they question your peace because they have become so used to chaos that calm feels unfamiliar. Your freedom becomes a mirror, reflecting possibilities they have avoided for years. This is why growth can unexpectedly change relationships. People who were comfortable with the old version of you may become distant when you begin to change. They may say you have become selfish because you finally have boundaries. They may accuse you of acting differently because you no longer tolerate disrespect. They may even convince themselves that your success is luck rather than effort because admitting the truth would require them to question their own choices. Not everyone who dislikes your progress is jealous, and not every disagreement hides insecurity. Some criticism is honest and valuable, but when your healthy growth repeatedly makes someone uncomfortable, it is worth asking what your freedom is awakening inside them. Your freedom does not force anyone to change. It simply reveals that change is possible. For people who have spent years convincing themselves they had no choice, that realization can feel deeply unsettling. Sometimes they are not reacting to your life at all. They are reacting to the life they believe they can no longer reclaim. You can miss someone and still be better without them. You can miss someone and still be better without them, because missing a person does not always mean they belong in your life. This is one of the hardest truths for the heart to accept. The mind can understand why someone had to leave, why a relationship had to end, why a friendship became unhealthy, or why distance became necessary. But the heart still remembers the voice, the comfort, the routine, the laughter, the history, and the version of them that once felt safe. This is why people often confuse missing someone with needing them back. They feel the emptiness and assume it is a sign of love. They feel the ache and think it means they made the wrong choice. But sometimes, what you miss is not the reality of the person. You miss the good moments, the familiar pattern, the emotional attachment, or the hope of who they could have been if things had turned out differently. A person can be important to your past and harmful to your present. They can have given you beautiful memories and still cost you your peace. They can be someone you love deeply and still be someone you cannot safely build with. That is what makes healing so painful. The heart does not delete attachment just because the mind has accepted the truth. Being better without someone does not mean they meant nothing. It means your life became lighter, calmer, clearer, or more honest after they were no longer close enough to keep hurting you. Sometimes peace feels lonely at first because your nervous system is still adjusting to the absence of chaos. Missing someone is human. Returning to what broke your peace is a choice. The real strength is learning to honor what you felt without reopening a door that your healing already proved should stay closed. Chaos feels normal to people raised in instability. Chaos feels normal to people raised in instability because the nervous system learns what life teaches it repeatedly. When someone grows up around shouting, sudden mood changes, broken promises, emotional distance, unpredictable love, or constant tension, their body begins to treat instability as familiar. It may hurt them, exhaust them, and make them anxious, but it also becomes the emotional language they understand best. This is why some people struggle when life becomes calm. Peace should feel safe, but to a person trained by instability, peace can feel suspicious. They may start wondering what is about to go wrong. They may overthink someone's silence. They may create problems where none exist. They may feel uncomfortable in healthy relationships because there is no emotional storm to decode. Their body is not used to ease, so calmness feels like waiting for danger. The sad part is that people often mistake familiar chaos for passion, love, excitement, or depth. If they grew up needing to earn affection, they may feel drawn to people who make love feel uncertain. If they had to monitor moods to stay safe, they may become highly sensitive to every change in tone. If peace was rare in their past, they may not trust it when it finally arrives. This does not mean they want pain. It means their system learned to survive inside it. Stability can feel strange because it asks them to stop living on alert. It asks them to receive love without panic, rest without guilt, and trust without constantly preparing for disappointment. Healing begins when a person realizes that normal is not always healthy. What feels familiar may only be what pain trained them to expect. Real peace may feel uncomfortable at first, not because it is wrong, but because the body is finally learning a life it was never taught to believe in. Being needed is often mistaken for being loved. Being needed is often mistaken for being loved because need can feel intense, urgent, and deeply personal. When someone depends on you, calls you first, leans on you emotionally, asks for your help, or says they cannot manage without you, it can create the feeling that you are special. You begin to believe your presence matters because their life becomes harder when you are not available. But being useful to someone is not always the same as being cherished by them. This is where many people get trapped. They confuse responsibility with intimacy. They confuse being relied on with being valued. They confuse someone's dependence with devotion. A person may need your comfort, your money, your patience, your forgiveness, your time, or your emotional labor, but still fail to love you in a healthy way. They may want access to what you provide without truly seeing the person behind the giving. For people who grew up feeling unseen, being needed can become addictive. It gives them a role. It tells them, I matter because someone cannot function without me. But that kind of importance can become a quiet prison. You may keep giving more than you have, not because you are loved well, but because you are afraid that if you stop being needed, you will stop being chosen. Real love does not only take from your strength, it cares about your tiredness. It does not only appear when someone needs saving, it also shows up when you need softness, rest, understanding, and support. Being needed can make you feel important, but being loved makes you feel safe. And one of the hardest human lessons is learning that a person can depend on you deeply while still not loving you properly. Strong opinions often hide deep insecurity. Strong opinions often hide deep insecurity because certainty can make a frightened person feel powerful. When someone speaks with force, refuses to listen, attacks opposing views, or treats every disagreement like disrespect, it may look like confidence from the outside. But underneath, there may be a quiet fear they are trying not to feel. A strong opinion can become a shield, protecting the person from doubt, shame, confusion, or the possibility that they might be wrong. Human beings do not only defend ideas, they defend the identity attached to those ideas. If someone has built their pride, reputation, lifestyle, or self-worth around a belief, questioning that belief can feel like questioning their entire existence. So instead of calmly exploring another perspective, they tighten their grip. They speak louder, they mock, they dismiss, they make the other person feel foolish, because deep down, they are trying to silence the discomfort rising inside themselves. This is why insecure people often need to win conversations. They are not always searching for truth. They are searching for emotional safety. Being right gives them a temporary feeling of control. It tells them they are not weak, not confused, not exposed, not ordinary. But the more fragile the insecurity, the more aggressive the opinion can become. A truly secure person can hold a strong belief without needing to crush everyone who sees differently. They can listen without feeling erased. They can be challenged without falling apart. But insecurity does not allow that much space. It needs agreement to feel stable. So when someone's opinion always comes with anger, pride, insults, or refusal to reflect, the issue may be deeper than the topic itself. Sometimes, the opinion is only the surface. The real secret is the insecurity hiding underneath, begging not to be discovered. What people avoid controls them most. What people avoid controls them most because avoidance does not make something disappear. It only gives it more power in the background. A person may avoid a conversation, a decision, a feeling, a truth, a memory, or a responsibility, believing silence will keep them safe. But what is avoided rarely stays quiet. It follows them into their moods, their choices, their relationships, and their private thoughts. This is why an unspoken truth can shape an entire life. Someone may avoid admitting they are unhappy, so they stay in the same situation for years. They may avoid confronting pain, so they become cold, distracted, or easily triggered. They may avoid failure, so they never begin. They may avoid rejection, so they never fully open their heart. From the outside, it looks like they are choosing comfort, but underneath, avoidance is choosing for them. The dangerous thing about avoidance is that it feels peaceful at first. It gives quick relief, no argument, no risk, no discomfort, no emotional exposure. But that relief becomes expensive over time. The conversation becomes heavier. The decision becomes scarier. The feeling becomes louder. The truth becomes harder to deny. What was once a small discomfort becomes a private prison. People often think control means keeping pain away, but real control begins when a person finally turns toward what they have been running from. The avoided thing loses power when it is faced honestly. The fear becomes clearer. The wound becomes speakable. The decision becomes possible. What you avoid does not leave you alone. It waits. It grows. It quietly trains your life around its presence until one day you realize you were not free. You were being led by the very thing you refused to face. Many listen to defend, not understand. Many listen to defend, not understand, because hearing someone fully can feel like losing control. When a person is confronted with feedback, disagreement, disappointment, or another person's pain, their first instinct is often not curiosity. It is protection. They begin preparing their response before the other person has finished speaking. They search for the weak part of the argument. They remember their own suffering. They collect excuses. They wait for the moment they can prove they are not the villain. This is why so many conversations fail even when both people are talking. Words are being exchanged, but nothing is being received. One person is trying to explain how they feel, while the other is busy building a defense. Instead of asking, "What are they really trying to tell me?" they silently ask, "How do I protect myself from blame?" The deeper reason is that understanding requires humility. To truly listen, a person must allow the possibility that they missed something, caused harm, misunderstood someone, or acted from their own wound. That is uncomfortable. It threatens the image they have of themselves as good, fair, wise, or innocent. So the ego steps in and turns the conversation into a courtroom. Defensive listening makes people feel safe for a moment, but it destroys connection slowly. The other person stops feeling heard. They begin to shrink their honesty. They learn that speaking openly only leads to arguments, excuses, or emotional punishment. Real listening is not agreeing with everything. It is staying present long enough to understand before protecting your pride. Most people do not need perfect words from you. They need proof that their feelings can exist in your presence without immediately being corrected, dismissed, or turned into a debate. Patterns repeat because familiarity feels safe. Patterns repeat because familiarity feels safe, even when the pattern is painful. A person may say they want something different, but when life offers them a new way to think, love, respond, or choose, they often return to what they already know. Not because it is good for them, but because the nervous system trusts what it recognizes. The familiar wound can feel less frightening than the unfamiliar cure. This is why people keep choosing the same type of relationship, reacting with the same anger, avoiding the same conversations, forgiving the same disrespect, or running back to the same habits. From the outside, it looks irrational. People may ask, why do they keep doing that? But inside the person, the pattern has history. It has emotional memory. It feels predictable. They already know how to survive it. The unknown demands a new identity. A healthy relationship may feel strange to someone used to chasing love. Peace may feel empty to someone raised around chaos. Honesty may feel dangerous to someone who learned that truth caused punishment. Rest may feel lazy to someone who was only praised for being useful, so the person repeats what hurts them because at least they know the rules of that pain. The most powerful patterns are not always chosen consciously. They live in the body before they become decisions. A person can promise to change, mean it deeply, and still fall back into the old cycle when fear rises. That is why breaking a pattern requires more than motivation. It requires teaching the mind and body that unfamiliar does not mean unsafe. Healing begins when a person stops asking, "Why do I keep doing this?" with shame, and starts asking, "What part of me still believes this is safer?" Some suffer quietly to avoid admitting wrong choices. Some suffer quietly to avoid admitting wrong choices because the pain of being wrong can feel heavier than the pain of staying stuck. A person may know deep inside that a relationship is draining them, a habit is destroying them, a decision was made from fear, or a path no longer fits who they are becoming. But admitting that truth means facing more than the mistake itself. It means facing the pride, time, energy, hope, and identity they invested in it. This is why people can remain in painful situations for years while pretending everything is manageable. They smile in public, defend their choices when questioned, and convince others they are fine, even while privately feeling exhausted. The suffering becomes hidden because the confession feels too humiliating. They would rather carry silent pain than hear themselves say, "I chose this, and it hurt me." Wrong choices are not always easy to leave because they often come with emotional evidence. Memories, promises, sacrifices, public opinions, family expectations, money, years, and loyalty all become reasons to stay. The person begins to think, "If I walk away now, what was all of that for?" So they keep suffering, not because they see no problem, but because leaving would force them to grieve the version of themselves that believed this choice would save them. The sad truth is that pride can turn a temporary mistake into a long-term prison. People often lose more trying to protect the image of being right than they would have lost by simply choosing again. Freedom begins when someone understands that admitting a wrong choice is not failure. It is self-rescue. It is the moment a person stops punishing their future just because their past made a painful decision. Intensity is often confused with depth. Intensity is often confused with depth because strong emotions can make a connection feel more meaningful than it really is. When something feels urgent, consuming, dramatic, passionate, or emotionally overwhelming, people often assume it must be important. They think, "If I feel this much, it must be real." But not every powerful feeling is proof of a deep bond. Sometimes intensity is only the nervous system reacting to uncertainty, fear, desire, or emotional hunger. This is why some people mistake chaos for love. A relationship filled with highs and lows can feel addictive because the emotional contrast is so strong. One moment there is closeness, the next moment distance. One moment there is affection, the next moment confusion. The heart begins to chase relief, and when relief finally comes, it feels like love. But sometimes it is not love. It is the body calming down after being emotionally disturbed. Depth is different. Depth does not always shout. It is not always dramatic. It is not built only on late-night confessions, strong attraction, painful longing, or intense arguments followed by emotional reunions. True depth has understanding, consistency, safety, patience, honesty, and the ability to remain steady when emotions rise. It does not need to constantly shake you to prove it matters. The dangerous part is that intensity can make shallow things feel profound. A person can become obsessed with someone they barely know because the emotions feel powerful. They can mistake anxiety for chemistry, longing for love, and emotional confusion for destiny. Real depth may feel quieter at first, especially to someone used to emotional storms. But quiet does not mean empty. Sometimes what feels less intense is actually healthier because it gives your heart room to breathe instead of keeping it addicted to the next emotional wave. Small disappointments reveal conflict style. Small disappointments reveal conflict style because people often show their true emotional habits when things do not go exactly their way. Anyone can appear kind, patient, mature, or understanding when everything is easy. But when a plan changes, a promise is delayed, a message is not answered quickly, a small request is denied, or someone does not receive the reaction they expected, their deeper pattern begins to show. This is where human nature becomes visible. Some people communicate clearly when disappointed. They say what hurt them without trying to punish you. Some become silent and expect you to guess what went wrong. Some turn cold, hoping distance will make you feel guilty. Some explode over small things because the disappointment touched an older wound. Some pretend they are fine, then store resentment quietly until it comes out later in another form. Small disappointments matter because they are emotional tests people do not know they are taking. They reveal whether a person seeks understanding or control. They show whether they can handle discomfort without becoming cruel. They expose whether someone wants repair or revenge. A tiny conflict can show you how safe a bigger conflict will be. This is why you should pay attention to how people behave when they do not get their way. Not to judge them harshly, but to understand what kind of emotional world they create under pressure. Do they listen or do they attack? Do they explain or do they punish? Do they take responsibility, or do they turn everything into your fault? The way someone handles small disappointment is rarely small. It is often a preview of how they will handle deeper hurt, stronger disagreement, and moments where love, respect, and maturity are truly tested. Character shows when people need nothing from you. Character shows when people need nothing from you, because that is when their behavior is no longer being shaped by desire, benefit, fear, or expectation. Many people can act kind when they want access. They can be respectful when they need help. They can be patient when they are trying to win approval. They can sound loyal when something is at stake. But when there is nothing to gain, the mask becomes harder to maintain. This is why you must watch how people treat you when you are no longer useful to them, when you cannot give them money, attention, comfort, status, opportunity, favors, or emotional support. Their real nature starts to appear. Some people remain warm because their respect was genuine. Others become distant, careless, rude, or dismissive because their kindness was never rooted in character. It was rooted in need. Human beings often reveal themselves in moments where there is no reward for goodness. How someone treats a waiter, a tired parent, a quiet friend, a struggling stranger, or someone who cannot benefit them says more than their polished words ever could. True character is not performance. It is who a person remains when there is no audience, no advantage, and no immediate consequence. The painful truth is that many relationships are built on usefulness, not love. The moment you stop providing what someone wanted, they may make you feel invisible. That is not always a loss. Sometimes it is a revelation. Real character does not switch off when benefit disappears. It does not need a prize to be decent. It does not treat people like tools, then call it friendship. The clearest test of someone's heart is how they behave when they no longer need anything from yours. Everyone wants growth, few want discomfort. Everyone wants growth, few want discomfort, because growth sounds beautiful until it starts demanding something from you. People love the idea of becoming wiser, stronger, calmer, richer, healthier, more confident, or more respected. They imagine the better version of themselves with excitement. But when the process begins, growth often does not feel inspiring. It feels inconvenient. It feels lonely. It feels like discipline when you want comfort, honesty when you want excuses, and patience when you want quick results. This is where most people retreat. They want transformation without tension. They want confidence without embarrassment. They want success without rejection. They want healing without facing old wounds. They want peace without having difficult conversations. They want a new life while still protecting every habit that belongs to the old one. The truth is that growth almost always begins by disturbing your current comfort. It asks you to stop blaming what is easier to blame. It asks you to admit where you have been delaying your own progress. It asks you to practice what you claim to value, even when no one is clapping for you. That part is not exciting. That part is where most people quietly return to familiar patterns. Discomfort is not always a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes it is proof that something old inside you is being stretched. A person who avoids every uncomfortable moment may also avoid every powerful transformation. This is why growth is rare, even though everyone talks about it. Many people want the result, but not the emotional cost. They want the new identity, but not the death of the old one. Real growth begins when a person stops asking life to change them gently and starts accepting that becoming more will sometimes feel like losing who they used to be. People attack what they secretly envy. People attack what they secretly envy because it is easier to criticize someone else's courage than to face your own fear. When a person sees someone becoming what they once wanted to become, doing what they were too afraid to do, or receiving what they secretly desire, it can create an uncomfortable feeling inside them. But instead of admitting envy, they often turn it into judgment. They say the person is showing off, trying too hard, being fake, acting proud, or thinking they are better than everyone else. This is one of the quietest truths about human nature. People do not always attack because they hate what they see. Sometimes they attack because they recognize what they abandoned in themselves. Someone who gave up on their dream may mock your ambition. Someone who feels trapped may criticize your freedom. Someone who feels unseen may belittle your confidence. Someone who is afraid to be bold may call your boldness attention-seeking. Envy often disguises itself as moral concern. It sounds reasonable on the surface, but underneath, it carries bitterness. Real concern tries to protect you without shrinking you. Envy tries to reduce you so the other person does not have to feel small beside you. This is why you must be careful whose criticism you absorb. Not every negative comment is wisdom. Some comments are pain, looking for somewhere to land. Some advice is fear wearing the mask of maturity. Some attacks are really confessions from people who cannot admit they wanted the same thing but did not choose it. When people attack what they secretly envy, they are not always revealing your flaw. They may be revealing the part of themselves that still hurts when they see someone else becoming free. Mocked dreams often remind others of abandoned ones. Mocked dreams often remind others of abandoned ones because people do not always laugh at what is unrealistic. Sometimes they laugh at what still hurts inside them. When you speak about a goal, a vision, a talent, a business, a creative idea, a new life, or a future that excites you, not everyone hears your dream clearly. Some people hear the echo of their own dream they buried years ago, and because that memory is painful, they turn it into mockery. This is why people may laugh too quickly when you share something meaningful. They may call it impossible, childish, foolish, too late, too risky, or unrealistic. On the surface, it sounds like logic, but underneath, it may be grief. They remember when they once believed in themselves before fear, failure, family pressure, money problems, shame, or disappointment made them stop. Your courage touches the place where their courage once died. A dreamer can make a defeated person uncomfortable without saying anything wrong. Your hope becomes evidence that hope is still possible. Your attempt becomes proof that they also could have tried again. That is a hard mirror to face. So instead of confronting their regret, they try to shrink your belief. If they can make your dream look stupid, they do not have to feel the pain of abandoning theirs. This does not mean every warning is jealousy. Some people truly want to protect you from mistakes. But honest guidance gives wisdom without killing your spirit. Mockery tries to embarrass you back into silence. When someone laughs at your dream, listen carefully. Sometimes they are not predicting your future. They are confessing what happened to their own. People miss feelings more than people. People miss feelings more than people because memory does not always replay reality honestly. When someone is gone, the mind often reaches for the emotional moments that once felt warm, exciting, safe, intense, or comforting. It remembers the laughter, the attention, the messages, the late conversations, the way life felt when hope was still alive. But it does not always remember the full weight of the confusion, the disrespect, the waiting, the disappointment, or the quiet damage that came with them. This is why people often believe they miss a person when they may actually miss who they were around that person. They miss feeling wanted. They miss feeling chosen. They miss having someone to think about. They miss the routine, the emotional rush, the dream of what could have been, and the version of themselves that believed everything might still work out. The person becomes mixed with the feeling until the heart can no longer separate the two. This is dangerous because feelings can make the past look softer than it was. Loneliness can edit memory. It can remove the painful parts and leave only the beautiful scenes. Suddenly, the person who hurt you becomes the person who once made you smile. The relationship that drained you becomes the relationship that once gave you purpose. The bond that confused you becomes the bond you think you cannot live without. But missing a feeling does not mean the person was good for you. It means something inside you is longing for comfort, connection, attention, or familiarity. Sometimes what you want back is not the person. It is the emotion they once awakened in you before everything became heavy. Healing begins when you stop worshiping the feeling and start remembering the full story. Painful certainty often feels safer than peace. Painful certainty often feels safer than peace because the human mind sometimes prefers a known hurt over an unknown healing. When a person has lived with a certain kind of pain for a long time, that pain becomes predictable. They know how it begins, how it feels, how to explain it, and how to survive it. It may drain them, break them, and keep them small, but at least it does not surprise them anymore. Peace, on the other hand, can feel unfamiliar. It does not come with the same emotional noise. It does not give the mind something to chase, fix, fear, or defend against. To someone who has been shaped by struggle, peace can feel suspicious, almost too quiet to trust. They may start asking, what if something goes wrong? What if this does not last? What if I relax and get hurt again? So they return to the painful certainty because it feels more controllable than the vulnerability of peace. This is why people sometimes stay in unhealthy relationships, familiar sadness, old habits, or limiting beliefs. The pain gives them a script. It tells them who they are, what to expect, and how to protect themselves. Peace asks them to release that script and step into a life they do not yet know how to manage. The sad truth is that some people are more comfortable suffering than receiving calmness, because suffering has become part of their identity. They do not always reject peace because they hate it. They reject it because it feels foreign. Healing begins when a person realizes that familiar pain is not safety. It is only a prison they have learned to decorate. Peace may feel strange at first, but strange does not mean dangerous. Some stay because leaving exposes the truth. Some stay because leaving exposes the truth, and that truth can feel more frightening than the pain they are already living with. A person may know a relationship is no longer healthy. A friendship has become one-sided, a job is draining their spirit, or a life path no longer fits them, but leaving would force them to admit what they have been trying to hide from themselves for a long time. This is not working. This has been hurting me. I stayed longer than I should have. That kind of truth can feel brutal. It does not only expose the situation, it exposes the hope they kept feeding, the excuses they repeated, the warnings they ignored, and the parts of themselves they betrayed just to keep things together. So they stay, not because they are blind, but because leaving would make the denial impossible to continue. Staying allows the story to survive. They can still say, maybe things will change. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe it is not that bad. Maybe I just need to be more patient. But leaving makes the truth visible. It turns quiet pain into a real decision. It forces the person to face the fact that love, loyalty, effort, time, or sacrifice was not enough to make something safe. This is why some people remain in situations that are clearly damaging them. The cage is painful, but the door is honest, and honesty demands grief. It demands courage. It demands the end of pretending. Sometimes leaving does not hurt because the future is worse. It hurts because the truth can no longer be hidden. It reveals what was broken, what was tolerated, and what part of the person already knew long before they finally walked away. People fear being seen. Trying. People fear being seen trying because effort exposes desire, and desire makes people feel vulnerable. It is easy to act uninterested when nothing is on the line. It is easy to say, I do not care, when you never risked anything. But the moment a person truly tries, they reveal something private. They wanted something badly enough to reach for it. That is what makes trying feel dangerous. Many people are not only afraid of failure, they are afraid of failing in public. They are afraid someone will see the unfinished version, the awkward beginning, the weak attempt, the uncertain voice, the first draft, the small audience, the slow progress, the beginner stage. They fear being laughed at before they have proof that they were right to believe in themselves. This is why people hide dreams until they look impressive. They practice in secret, delay launching, avoid posting, refuse to start, or pretend they are not serious. They would rather be seen as lazy than be seen as hopeful and unsuccessful. Laziness protects the ego. Trying removes that protection. The painful truth is that many dreams die because people wanted guaranteed respect before they were willing to begin. But every person who becomes great must first survive being ordinary in public. Every strong voice was once unsure, every expert was once clumsy, every admired life once looked unfinished. Being seen trying is not shameful. It is evidence that something inside you is still alive. The people who mock effort are often the ones who have made fear their home. They laugh because your attempt reminds them of their own silence. The real danger is not being seen trying. The real danger is hiding so long that your dream only exists in your mind. Independence can hide a deep need for love. Independence can hide a deep need for love because some people learn to survive by pretending they do not need anyone. They become strong, capable, quiet, self-sufficient, and emotionally guarded, not always because they have no need for connection, but because needing people once felt unsafe. Maybe they were disappointed too many times. Maybe they asked for help and were ignored. Maybe they trusted someone and were abandoned. So they built a personality around not needing what once hurt them to need. From the outside, this kind of person may look powerful. They handle things alone. They do not beg. They do not explain much. They rarely show weakness. They may even say they are fine before anyone has asked. But sometimes that independence is not peace. It is protection. It is the heart saying, if I never depend on anyone, no one can disappoint me the same way again. The painful part is that people like this may deeply crave love, but struggle to receive it. They want closeness, but fear losing control. They want support, but feel guilty needing it. They want to be held emotionally, but panic when someone gets too close. So they push people away, not because they do not care, but because care makes them vulnerable. Real independence is healthy when it comes from strength, but false independence is loneliness wearing armor. It says, I do not need anyone, when the deeper truth may be, I needed people before, and they taught me that needing was dangerous. Healing begins when a person learns that needing love does not make them weak, it makes them human. The goal is not to need nobody. The goal is to stop choosing people who make your needs feel unsafe. Loudness often hides insecurity. Loudness often hides insecurity because some people raise their voice when they do not feel strong inside. They speak over others, dominate conversations, interrupt, exaggerate, argue aggressively, or try to become the biggest presence in the room because silence makes them feel exposed. From the outside, this can look like confidence, but many times it is not confidence at all. It is fear trying to sound powerful. A truly secure person does not always need to be the loudest. They can speak calmly and still be heard. They can disagree without humiliating others. They can enter a room without needing to control every eye in it, but insecurity often demands attention because attention feels like proof of importance. If people are looking, reacting, laughing, or listening, the insecure person feels temporarily safe. This is why some people become louder when they feel challenged. A simple question can make them defensive. A small correction can feel like an attack. Another person's confidence can make them compete for attention. They may use volume, sarcasm, insults, or dramatic reactions to cover the fear that they are not respected, not valued, or not enough. The sad truth is that loudness can become a mask people forget they are wearing. They may believe they are bold, honest, or strong, when really they are protecting a fragile place inside themselves. Their noise keeps people from noticing their fear. Their confidence becomes performance instead of peace. But real strength does not always announce itself. Sometimes the calmest person in the room has the deepest confidence because they do not need to prove they exist. Loudness may win attention quickly, but quiet security often carries more power. The need to be loud is often the hidden fear of being invisible. Charm attracts, but consistency builds trust. Charm attracts, but consistency builds trust because first impressions can open a door, but repeated behavior decides whether someone feels safe enough to stay. A charming person can speak beautifully, make you laugh, give attention, say the right words, and create instant warmth. They can make a moment feel special. They can make you feel seen quickly. But charm alone does not prove character. It only proves that someone knows how to create a feeling. This is why people are often drawn to charm before they understand the person behind it. Charm can feel exciting because it works fast. It creates curiosity, comfort, and emotional interest. But over time, people do not trust what sounds good. They trust what stays steady. They trust the person who shows up when it is not convenient, keeps their word when no one is watching, tells the truth when lying would be easier, and treats them well even after the excitement has faded. Consistency is powerful because it gives the nervous system evidence. It says, this person is not only kind when they want something. This person is not only present when the mood is good. This person is not only respectful when they are trying to impress me. Trust grows when behavior repeats in a healthy way until the heart no longer has to keep guessing. The painful truth is that many people mistake charm for safety. They believe the sweet words, the intense attention, and the polished personality mean someone is trustworthy. But trust is not built in the beginning. It is built in the pattern. Charm may win attention, but consistency earns peace. A person who is charming can make you feel special for a moment. A person who is consistent can make you feel safe over time. Excuses reveal what people refuse to sacrifice. Excuses reveal what people refuse to sacrifice because every excuse protects something. It may protect comfort, pride, fear, laziness, attention, image, convenience, or an old identity someone is not ready to lose. When people say they cannot change, cannot start, cannot leave, cannot speak up, cannot forgive, cannot grow, or cannot become better, sometimes there are real obstacles. But many times, underneath the explanation is a hidden attachment they do not want to admit. A person may say they do not have time, when the truth is they do not want to sacrifice distraction. They may say they are waiting for the right moment, when the truth is they do not want to sacrifice certainty. They may say they cannot walk away, when the truth is they do not want to sacrifice familiarity. They may say they are too tired to improve, when the truth is they do not want to sacrifice the comfort of staying the same. Excuses are powerful because they make avoidance sound reasonable. They allow a person to delay responsibility without feeling guilty. They create a story that protects them from the pain of admitting, I want the result, but I do not want the cost. That is why excuses often sound logical on the surface, but repeat endlessly underneath. The painful truth is that people reveal their priorities by what they keep defending. If someone truly wants change, they eventually start giving something up. Sleep, ego, old habits, approval, comfort, distractions, or fear must be placed on the altar of growth. An excuse is not always a lie. Sometimes it is a confession. It quietly tells you what a person values more than the thing they claim to want. Growth begins when someone stops polishing excuses and starts asking, what am I protecting that is keeping me stuck? People change when staying the same becomes costly. People change when staying the same becomes costly because comfort does not usually lose power until it starts taking too much. Many people know what they need to fix long before they fix it. They know the habit is hurting them, the relationship is draining them, the attitude is blocking them, the fear is controlling them, or the old pattern is keeping them stuck. But knowledge alone rarely changes a person. Pain has to become expensive enough to disturb their loyalty to the familiar. This is why people can hear advice for years and still ignore it. They may receive warnings, see signs, feel tired, lose opportunities, damage relationships, or disappoint themselves repeatedly, yet still continue the same way. Not because they do not understand, but because the current pain still feels manageable. As long as the cost is bearable, the old self remains in control. Then one day, something shifts. The same excuse no longer comforts them. The same pattern no longer feels normal. The same situation becomes too heavy to defend. They realize that staying the same is now costing them peace, respect, health, time, love, money, confidence, or the future they secretly want. That is when change becomes less frightening than remaining unchanged. The painful truth is that many people do not transform because they see the light. They transform because they can no longer survive the weight of their own darkness. Loss, embarrassment, exhaustion, heartbreak, failure, or disappointment often becomes the doorway into a new life. This is why rock bottom can sometimes wake a person up. It removes the illusion that things can continue this way forever. Real change begins when the price of staying the same becomes higher than the fear of becoming different. Many want honesty until it hurts. Their illusion. Many want honesty until it hurts their illusion because truth sounds noble when it is far away, but threatening when it touches something personal. People often say they want the truth. They want real friends, honest feedback, sincere love, clear answers, and people who will not lie to them. But the moment honesty exposes a fantasy they were protecting, their openness can disappear. Suddenly, the truth feels rude, harsh, negative, disrespectful, or unnecessary. This happens because many people do not only believe in facts, they believe in emotional stories that help them feel safe. They may believe someone loves them more than they actually do. They may believe they are trying their best when they are really avoiding responsibility. They may believe a situation is improving when the pattern has not changed. They may believe they are at peace when they are only numb. Honesty threatens these illusions because it removes the comfort of pretending. The difficult part is that illusions often feel kinder than truth at first. An illusion lets someone delay grief. It lets them avoid shame. It lets them keep hoping without making a hard decision. But truth demands movement. It asks them to see clearly, choose honestly, and stop decorating what is quietly hurting them. This is why people sometimes attack the person who tells the truth instead of facing what was revealed. The messenger becomes the problem because the message is too painful to hold. They would rather protect the illusion than thank the truth. But honesty does not destroy what is real. It only exposes what was already weak. The people who truly want truth must be willing to lose the fantasy that made the lie comfortable. Because real honesty is not only hearing what feels good, it is surviving what wakes you up. Boundaries reveal who wanted control. Boundaries reveal who wanted control because some people only seem peaceful when you are easy to access, easy to convince, easy to use, or easy to silence. As long as you keep saying yes, explaining yourself too much, forgiving quickly, answering every call, tolerating disrespect, and making yourself available whenever they need you, they may call you kind, loyal, humble, or understanding. But the moment you place a limit, their real relationship with you begins to show. A healthy person may not always like your boundary, but they will try to respect it. They may feel disappointed, but they will not punish you for protecting your peace. A controlling person reacts differently. They make you feel guilty. They accuse you of changing. They call you selfish. They act hurt, not because you harmed them, but because you stopped giving them unlimited access to you. This is why boundaries are so revealing. They separate love from ownership. They show who valued your presence and who valued your obedience. They expose who respected you as a person and who only enjoyed the version of you that never said no. The painful truth is that some people do not miss your heart when you set boundaries. They miss the control they had over your time, energy, emotions, and decisions. They miss being able to cross lines without consequences. They miss the old version of you who chose their comfort over your own well-being. A boundary is not an attack. It is a line of self-respect. But to someone who benefited from your lack of limits, that line will feel like rejection. That is why their reaction tells you everything. Boundaries do not ruin real relationships. They reveal which ones were quietly built on control. Some hate drama but create it through avoidance. Some hate drama but create it through avoidance because they believe silence is the same as peace. They do not like arguments, tension, confrontation, or emotional discomfort, so they try to escape anything that feels difficult. They ignore messages, delay conversations, pretend nothing is wrong, change the subject, act fine when they are not, or wait for problems to disappear on their own. From the outside, they may look calm, but avoidance is not calmness. It is fear hiding from responsibility. The strange thing about avoidance is that it often creates the exact drama a person is trying to prevent. A conversation avoided today becomes resentment tomorrow. A truth ignored for weeks becomes an explosion later. A small misunderstanding left unspoken can grow into suspicion, distance, and emotional confusion. The person may say, "I do not like drama," while their refusal to communicate keeps creating it. This happens because peace requires honesty, not just quietness. Real peace is built when people are willing to speak clearly, listen maturely, apologize when necessary, and repair what is broken. Avoidance only covers the mess. It does not clean it. It pushes tension underground, where it becomes heavier, darker, and harder to control. Many avoidant people are not trying to hurt others. They may have learned that conflict is dangerous, that speaking up leads to punishment, or that emotions make people leave. So they protect themselves by disappearing emotionally. But the people around them are left guessing, waiting, overthinking, and carrying the weight of what was never said. Avoidance may feel safe in the moment, but it slowly destroys trust. Drama does not always come from loud arguments. Sometimes, it comes from all the conversations someone was too afraid to have. People often need witness, not solutions. People often need witness, not solutions, because pain does not always want to be fixed first. Sometimes, it wants to be seen. When someone opens up about what is hurting them, many people rush to advise, correct, explain, compare, or tell them what to do next. The intention may be good, but the effect can feel lonely. It can make the hurting person feel like their emotions are a problem to solve quickly instead of a human experience to understand gently. This is why advice can sometimes feel cold, even when it is true. A person may already know what they should do. They may already know they need to leave, rest, forgive, speak up, change, or stop expecting from someone who keeps disappointing them. But knowing the answer does not remove the weight of what they feel. Before they can act, they may need someone to sit with the truth of their pain without rushing them out of it. Being witnessed means someone says, through presence and attention, what happened to you matters. It means they do not minimize your hurt, turn it into a lesson too quickly, or make you feel weak for struggling. They listen long enough for your nervous system to feel less alone. The powerful thing about being witnessed is that it gives pain a safe place to land. Once a person feels truly heard, they often become more ready for clarity. But when they are pushed towards solutions too quickly, they may shut down, defend themselves, or feel misunderstood. Not every wound needs immediate instruction. Some wounds first need warmth. Sometimes the most healing thing you can give someone is not the perfect answer, but the rare feeling that they do not have to carry their pain unseen. Hidden fear shapes public personality. Hidden fear shapes public personality because people often build their outer image around what they are secretly trying to protect. The confident person may not always be fearless. The funny person may not always be happy. The quiet person may not always be peaceful. The controlling person may not always be strong. Many public behaviors are not pure personality. They are survival strategies that became habits over time. A person who fears rejection may become overly pleasing, always agreeable, always available, always careful not to disappoint anyone. A person who fears being ignored may become loud, dramatic, or constantly entertaining because attention feels like proof they matter. A person who fears betrayal may act cold and independent, not because they do not need love, but because needing love feels unsafe. A person who fears failure may act uninterested because pretending not to care feels less painful than being seen trying. This is why people are often more complex than they appear. What looks like arrogance may be fear of feeling small. What looks like laziness may be fear of not being good enough. What looks like emotional distance may be fear of being hurt again. What looks like perfectionism may be fear of criticism. The public personality becomes a costume designed to keep the hidden fear from being exposed. The sad part is that people can become trapped inside the personality that once protected them. They may keep performing strength when they need support. They may keep acting unbothered when they are lonely. They may keep controlling everything because uncertainty feels unbearable. To understand people deeply, watch what they protect most. Behind many personalities is a fear quietly directing the performance. And sometimes, the person you see is not who they truly are, but who they learn to become, so the world would not touch their wound. Strength impresses, vulnerability connects. Strength impresses, vulnerability connects because people may admire what looks powerful, but they bond with what feels human. Strength can make someone respected. It can make them appear disciplined, capable, confident, controlled, and hard to break. People may look at strength and feel inspired by it. They may praise it, follow it, or even envy it. But strength alone can also create distance if it never allows anyone to see the heart underneath. Vulnerability is different. It does not always impress people immediately, but it gives them permission to feel close. When someone admits they are afraid, tired, uncertain, healing, learning, or still carrying something painful, it reminds others that they are not alone in their own hidden struggles. That honesty opens a door that perfection never can. A flawless image may attract attention, but a real moment creates connection. This is why people often feel safer around someone who is strong enough to be honest, not just strong enough to appear untouched. Vulnerability does not mean oversharing or giving everyone access to your wounds. It means having the courage to be real where it matters. It means allowing someone to see the truth without decorating it too much. The painful truth is that many people hide behind strength because they believe being vulnerable will make them less respected. They think they must always be composed, useful, wise, and emotionally controlled. But constant strength can become lonely. It can make others admire you from far away while never knowing how to reach you. Real connection begins when strength stops performing and starts breathing. People may be impressed by your ability to carry everything, but they connect with the moment you reveal that carrying everything has not been easy. People remember how you made them feel. People remember how you made them feel because emotions leave deeper fingerprints than words. A person may forget the exact sentence you said, the clothes you wore, the place you met, or the small details of a conversation, but they rarely forget whether they felt safe, small, valued, ignored, judged, understood, or embarrassed in your presence. The mind may lose details, but the body remembers emotional impact. This is why kindness can stay with someone for years, even if it seemed small to you. A gentle word during a hard season, a moment of patience when they expected rejection, or a simple act of attention when they felt invisible can become a memory they carry quietly. You may not remember offering it, but they remember receiving it because it touched a place that needed softness. The same is true for pain. A person may move on from an argument, accept an apology, or stop talking about what happened, but the feeling can remain. If you made them feel foolish for opening up, unsafe for being honest, or unwanted when they needed care, that emotional mark can shape how close they allow you to get again. This is why presence matters more than performance. People do not only measure you by what you claim to be. They measure you by the atmosphere they feel around you. Do they feel calm or tense? Seen or dismissed? Respected or used? Free or controlled? The strange secret is that your emotional effect on people becomes part of your reputation in their hearts. Long after the moment passes, they may not remember every word, but they remember what their nervous system learned about you. Sometimes the strongest memory you leave is not what you said, it is who someone became while standing near you. Priorities show through repeated behavior. Priorities show through repeated behavior because people eventually reveal what truly matters to them by what they keep choosing. Words can be polished, promises can sound emotional, apologies can feel sincere in the moment, but repetition tells the deeper truth. What someone does once may be a mistake, pressure, weakness, or impulse. What they do again and again becomes evidence. This is why you should not only listen to what people say they value, watch what they protect with their time, energy, attention, money, effort, and discipline. A person may say family matters, but never show up when family needs them. They may say they love you, but repeatedly ignore what hurts you. They may say they want success, but keep choosing comfort over effort. They may say they want peace, but continue feeding the same drama they claim to hate. Repeated behavior is powerful because it removes confusion. It shows the difference between desire and priority. A desire is something someone wishes for. A priority is something they make room for, even when life becomes inconvenient. Many people confuse the two. They think wanting something means it matters, but what truly matters gets protected. The painful truth is that people can care about something and still not prioritize it. They can love you and still not choose you properly. They can want change and still not sacrifice enough to create it. That is why repeated behavior must be taken seriously, even when the words sound beautiful. Patterns are quiet confessions. They tell you where someone's loyalty really lives. If their actions keep contradicting their promises, believe the pattern. Not because people cannot change, but because change also has a pattern. Until behavior changes repeatedly, the old priority is still speaking louder than the new promise. Some apologize to end tension, not change. Some apologize to end tension, not change, because they are more uncomfortable with consequences than with the harm they caused. When a person says sorry, it can sound like accountability, but not every apology comes from reflection. Some apologies are offered because the silence feels heavy, the other person is pulling away, the argument has become exhausting, or the relationship is no longer giving them easy access. They are not always trying to understand the wound. Sometimes they are trying to stop feeling the pressure of being confronted. This is why some people apologize quickly but repeat the same behavior. Their words create temporary peace, but their patterns remain untouched. They may say, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it," or let's move on. But what they really want is emotional relief. They want the atmosphere to soften. They want forgiveness without repair. They want the conversation to end before it requires them to look deeply at themselves. A real apology carries responsibility. It does not rush the hurt person to be okay. It does not demand instant closeness. It does not use guilt to escape consequences. It says, I see what I did. I understand why it hurt, and I am willing to change the behavior that caused this. But an apology meant only to end tension has a different feeling. It sounds sorry, but it avoids depth. It wants peace without discomfort. It treats your pain like an obstacle instead of a message. This is why you must watch what happens after the apology. Words may open the door, but changed behavior proves whether the apology had roots. Some people are sorry because they hurt you. Others are only sorry because your reaction made their life uncomfortable. Access is often mistaken for intimacy. Access is often mistaken for intimacy because being close to someone's life can feel like being close to their heart. When someone texts you often, shares details about their day, calls you when they are bored, tells you personal stories, spends time with you, or lets you see parts of their routine, it can create the feeling that something deep exists between you. But access is not always intimacy. Sometimes it is only availability, comfort, habit, or convenience. This is where many people become emotionally confused. They believe that because someone keeps coming around, that person must value them deeply. They believe that because someone talks to them late at night, shares secrets, or asks for emotional support, there must be a real bond. But a person can give you access to their thoughts without giving you access to their commitment. They can share their problems without truly seeing your heart. They can enjoy your presence without building anything meaningful with you. Real intimacy is not just closeness. It is emotional responsibility. It is honesty, consistency, care, respect, vulnerability, and the willingness to protect the connection. Access lets someone enter your space. Intimacy proves they know how to honor it. The painful truth is that some people want the benefits of closeness without the responsibility that comes with it. They want comfort, attention, emotional support, and familiarity, but not accountability, loyalty, or depth. So they keep you near enough to feel connected, but far enough to avoid responsibility. That is why access can become dangerous when the heart mistakes it for love. Just because someone has a place in your daily life does not mean they have earned a place in your inner world. Real intimacy is not measured by how often someone reaches you, but by how carefully they hold what they are allowed to reach. Guilt becomes blame when people cannot face it. Guilt becomes blame when people cannot face it, because guilt forces a person to stand in front of their own actions without a hiding place. It says, you hurt someone. You failed to show up. You knew better. You ignored what mattered. For a mature person, guilt can become a doorway into honesty, apology, and change. But for someone who cannot tolerate the discomfort of seeing themselves clearly, guilt quickly turns into defense. This is why some people attack the person they hurt. Instead of saying, I was wrong, they say, you made me do it. Instead of admitting they crossed a line, they focus on your reaction. Instead of facing the damage, they question your tone, your timing, your sensitivity, or your memory. The goal is not truth. The goal is escape. Blame gives guilty people a way to feel innocent again. If they can make you responsible for their behavior, they do not have to carry the full weight of what they chose. If they can turn themselves into the victim, they do not have to sit with the shame of being the one who caused pain. This is why conversations with such people can feel confusing. You enter the conversation hurt, but somehow leave feeling like you are the problem. Your pain gets put on trial while their behavior disappears from the center. The painful truth is that some people would rather rewrite the story than face their part in it. Guilt asks for humility, but blame protects pride. And when someone is more loyal to their pride than to your pain, they will keep turning every mirror into a weapon, just so they never have to see themselves clearly. Pride often comes before relationships. Pride often comes before relationships because many people would rather protect their ego than protect the bond. They may care about someone deeply, but when conflict appears, their need to be right becomes stronger than their desire to understand. Instead of softening, they defend. Instead of listening, they explain. Instead of apologizing, they wait for the other person to come first. What could have been repaired with humility becomes damaged by silence, stubbornness, and emotional distance. This happens because pride makes people feel safe. It tells them that admitting fault means losing power. It tells them that apologizing makes them weak. It tells them that reaching out first means they care more. So they stand firm, even when their heart is tired. They pretend not to care, even when they are replaying everything in private. They choose the cold comfort of ego over the warm risk of honesty. The sad part is that pride can make people lose what they actually wanted to keep. A friendship can fade because no one wanted to speak first. A relationship can break because someone cared more about winning the argument than healing the wound. A family bond can become distant because apology felt too humiliating. Real love requires moments where the ego must bow. It requires saying, "I was wrong, I hurt you, I miss you," or "Can we talk?" Even when pride wants to stay silent. Not because you have no self-respect, but because connection cannot survive where ego is always protected first. Pride may help someone feel powerful for a moment, but it often leaves them alone with the consequences. Many people do not lose relationships because love disappeared. They lose them because pride kept speaking louder than love. You become difficult when control stops working. You become difficult when control stops working because some people only liked the version of you they could manage. They liked you when you were quiet about your needs, quick to forgive, easy to pressure, afraid of disappointing them, and willing to explain yourself until they felt comfortable. As long as you made their life easier, they called you kind, patient, loyal, peaceful, or understanding. But the moment you stopped shrinking yourself to keep them satisfied, the label changed. This is one of the most revealing parts of human nature. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries often experience your self-respect as an attack. When you stop saying yes automatically, they say you have changed. When you stop tolerating disrespect, they say you are too sensitive. When you stop being available at every hour, they say you are becoming selfish. When you stop explaining every decision, they say you are acting proud. But you did not become difficult. You became harder to control. There is a difference. Difficulty is when someone refuses peace for no reason. Self-respect is when someone refuses to keep paying for peace with their own emotional damage. The painful truth is that some relationships only feel smooth because one person is constantly surrendering. The moment that person begins to stand upright, the hidden imbalance becomes visible. What looked like harmony was really obedience. What looked like closeness was really access. What looked like love was sometimes control wearing a gentle face. So when people suddenly call you difficult, pay attention to what changed. Did you become cruel or did you become honest? Did you become selfish or did you stop abandoning yourself? Sometimes being called difficult is the first sign that your freedom has finally interrupted someone else's control. Many want loyalty without responsibility. Many want loyalty without responsibility because loyalty gives them comfort, access, forgiveness, patience, and emotional security, but responsibility demands maturity. They want people to stay, understand, support, defend, wait, forgive, and keep showing up, even when they are not doing enough to protect the relationship. They want the benefits of devotion without the burden of becoming someone worthy of that devotion. This is why some people become upset when loyalty has limits. They expect you to remain available no matter how often they disappoint you. They expect you to keep believing in them after repeated broken promises. They expect your patience to survive their neglect, your forgiveness to erase their patterns, and your love to cover the emotional debt they refuse to pay. But real loyalty is not blind endurance. It is not staying silent while someone keeps hurting you. It is not proving love by accepting disrespect. Loyalty becomes unhealthy when one person is expected to keep giving while the other avoids accountability. Responsibility is what makes loyalty safe. It says, "If you trust me, I will not treat that trust carelessly." It says, "If you stay, I will also do the work to make staying feel safe." Without responsibility, loyalty becomes a trap. One person keeps sacrificing while the other keeps collecting the benefits. The painful truth is that many people do not want loyalty because they value your heart. They want it because it gives them security without requiring change. They want to be chosen without becoming considerate. They want to be forgiven without becoming different. Loyalty should not mean carrying someone who refuses to stand. It should not mean proving your love to someone who keeps proving they will not protect it. Real loyalty must walk beside responsibility, or it slowly becomes self-abandonment. True nature shows around powerless people. True nature shows around powerless people because that is where performance becomes unnecessary. Many people can be polite to a boss, respectful to someone wealthy, patient with someone popular, or kind to someone who can benefit them. But that kind of behavior does not always prove character. Sometimes it only proves strategy. The real test comes when they are dealing with someone who cannot reward them, punish them, promote them, expose them, or give them anything in return. This is why you should watch how people treat waiters, cleaners, drivers, children, elderly people, quiet friends, struggling relatives, or anyone they believe has no power over their life. Do they speak with respect, or do they become careless? Do they show patience, or do they act superior? Do they still say thank you, listen, and behave decently, or do they become harsh because there is no consequence? Power often reveals what was already inside a person. When someone feels above another person, their hidden beliefs begin to show. If they secretly measure human worth by status, money, beauty, usefulness, or influence, they will treat powerless people as less important. They may not even notice it because entitlement can feel normal to the entitled. The painful truth is that some people are not kind. They are selective. They are gentle upward and cruel downward. They know how to impress those above them while ignoring those beneath them. That is not kindness. That is calculation. Real character does not need an audience, a reward, or a social advantage. It remains decent when nobody important is watching. The way someone treats powerless people shows whether their goodness is rooted in the heart or only borrowed for appearance. If a person must see power before they show respect, they were never truly respectful. Attention often masks a need for connection. Attention often masks a need for connection because many people do not know how to ask to be truly seen. Instead of saying, "I feel lonely," they perform. Instead of saying, "I need closeness," they chase reactions. Instead of saying, "I want to matter to someone," they seek likes, compliments, laughter, drama, admiration, or constant replies. On the surface, it may look like confidence or hunger for popularity, but underneath, it can be a quiet ache for emotional contact. This is why attention can become addictive. It gives quick proof that someone noticed you. A message, a compliment, a stare, a laugh, or a reaction can make a person feel alive for a moment. But attention fades fast when it is not supported by real connection. The person may receive plenty of eyes and still feel unseen. They may be surrounded by people and still feel emotionally untouched. Connection is different from attention. Attention says, "People are looking at me." Connection says, "Someone understands me." Attention can admire the surface. Connection reaches the hidden place. Attention can be loud, exciting, and temporary. Connection is quieter, deeper, and more nourishing. The painful truth is that some people keep performing because they are afraid their real self will not be enough. They would rather be noticed for an image than risk being rejected for who they truly are. So they become entertaining, attractive, dramatic, useful, mysterious, or impressive, hoping someone will finally look past the performance and love the person underneath. But attention cannot replace connection for long. It can distract from loneliness, but it cannot heal it. The soul does not only want to be watched, it wants to be known, chosen, understood, and held without needing to perform. Silence can mean peace, fear, punishment, or exhaustion. Silence can mean peace, fear, punishment, or exhaustion, which is why silence is one of the most misunderstood human behaviors. When someone becomes quiet, people often assume they know what it means. They may think the person is calm, angry, distant, guilty, healed, or uninterested. But silence is not always one thing. Sometimes silence is a peaceful room. Sometimes it is a locked door. Sometimes it is a wound that has stopped asking to be understood. Peaceful silence feels safe. It does not carry tension. It is the quiet of someone who has accepted what they cannot control. They no longer need to argue, prove, explain, or chase. Their silence is not meant to hurt anyone. It is simply the sound of inner rest. Fearful silence is different. It comes from someone who has learned that speaking can lead to rejection, punishment, conflict, or shame. They may have many thoughts, but they swallow them because honesty feels dangerous. Their silence is not agreement, it is self-protection. Then there is punishing silence. This kind is used as a weapon. The person becomes quiet, not because they need space, but because they want you to feel anxious, guilty, or desperate for their attention. It is control without words. Exhausted silence may be the saddest kind. It comes when someone has explained too much, tried too long, cried too privately, and finally has nothing left to say. They are not trying to win anymore. They are tired of being misunderstood. This is why silence must be read carefully. The absence of words does not always mean the absence of feeling. Sometimes silence is peace. Sometimes it is fear. Sometimes it is punishment. Sometimes it is a person finally running out of strength. Betrayal rarely appears suddenly. It reveals slowly. Betrayal rarely appears suddenly. It reveals slowly because most people do not break trust in one dramatic moment. They begin with small shifts, small lies, small silences, small disrespect, and small choices that seem easy to excuse. At first, the signs are usually quiet. A change in tone, a hidden detail, a promise delayed, a boundary crossed lightly, a feeling in your body that something is no longer the same. This is why betrayal often shocks the heart, even when the mind can look back and see the pattern. The final act may feel sudden, but the truth was usually leaking out long before it became impossible to ignore. People rarely become careless with your trust overnight. They often test what you will overlook first. They learn what you will forgive, what you will explain away, and how much distance can grow before you finally ask questions. The painful part is that loyalty can make people blind. When you love someone, trust someone, or believe in the version of them you first met, you may keep protecting the image even while their actions are changing. You tell yourself they are stressed, busy, confused, hurt, or not themselves. Sometimes that is true, but sometimes the version you are defending is no longer the version standing in front of you. Betrayal reveals slowly because character does not always collapse loudly. Sometimes it fades in repeated choices. It shows in the moments someone chooses convenience over honesty, attention over loyalty, secrecy over respect, and self-interest over the bond they claim to value. That is why small signs matter, not because every mistake is betrayal, but because repeated disregard is rarely innocent. Betrayal often begins long before the final wound. It begins when someone stops protecting what they once promised not to hurt. Forgiveness follows. Change more than regret. Forgiveness follows change more than regret because regret can speak loudly while behavior stays the same. A person can cry, apologize, explain, feel guilty, and say they never meant to hurt anyone, but regret alone does not rebuild safety. Regret shows that someone feels bad about what happened. Change shows that they understand why it happened and are willing to become different enough not to repeat it. This is where many people misunderstand forgiveness. They think pain should disappear because they said sorry. They expect the person they hurt to soften immediately because they look remorseful. But the wounded heart does not heal only from emotional words. It heals from new evidence. It watches patterns. It looks for consistency. It asks, will this happen again? Not just, do they feel bad right now? Regret can be real and still not be enough. Someone may genuinely hate what they did, but if they keep returning to the same excuses, the same reactions, the same carelessness, or the same selfish habits, their regret becomes another cycle. It creates hope, then disappointment. It opens the door, then breaks trust again. Change is different because it costs something. It requires humility, patience, self-awareness, discipline, and the willingness to be uncomfortable. It means the person stops asking to be trusted quickly and starts becoming trustworthy slowly. It means they do not use apology as a shortcut around repair. The painful truth is that many people want forgiveness because they want relief from guilt, not because they are ready to carry responsibility. But real forgiveness becomes easier when the hurt person no longer has to fear the same wound returning. Regret may start the conversation, but change is what teaches the heart that it may be safe to breathe again. Love without maturity still hurts. Love without maturity still hurts because feeling something deeply does not automatically make someone capable of handling it wisely. A person can love you and still be selfish, careless, inconsistent, defensive, jealous, avoidant, controlling, or emotionally unavailable. They may truly care, but if they lack maturity, their love can become confusing instead of safe. This is one of the hardest truths to accept because people often believe love should be enough to fix behavior. But love is only one part of connection. Maturity is what teaches love how to behave. Without maturity, love may apologize, but not change. It may want closeness, but fear responsibility. It may promise loyalty, but keep entertaining temptation. It may feel sorry after hurting you, but still refuse to understand the wound. It may hold you tightly one moment and abandon you emotionally the next. This is why immature love can be so painful. It gives you enough affection to hope, but not enough stability to rest. It can make you feel wanted but not protected, chosen but not respected, close but not secure. The person may not be pretending. They may genuinely love you in the only way they know how. But if their love is not supported by self-control, honesty, accountability, patience, and emotional awareness, it will still cause damage. The painful truth is that some people love from their wounds, not from their wisdom. They love with fear, ego, insecurity, pride, and old survival patterns. So their love becomes intense, but unsafe. Real love needs maturity to become healthy. It needs the ability to listen, repair, grow, respect boundaries, and think beyond the moment. Love may explain why someone cares, but maturity proves whether they can care without constantly hurting what they claim to value. Chemistry is not compatibility. Chemistry is not compatibility because attraction can create a powerful feeling long before a person proves they are right for your life. Chemistry is the spark, the pull, the excitement, the curiosity, the emotional rush that makes someone feel special quickly. It can make conversations feel effortless, silence feel charged, and ordinary moments feel meaningful. But chemistry only tells you that something is activated inside you. It does not tell you whether that person is safe, mature, honest, consistent, or capable of building anything healthy with you. This is why people often become attached to someone who does not truly fit them. The connection feels strong, so they assume it must be deep. The energy feels rare, so they ignore the red flags. The attraction feels intense, so they excuse the inconsistency, the confusion, the disrespect, or the emotional distance. They think, "I have never felt this way before," without asking, "Does this person actually treat me well?" Compatibility is quieter than chemistry. It is found in values, timing, communication, emotional maturity, respect, lifestyle, conflict style, and the ability to choose each other in real life, not just in exciting moments. Chemistry may make someone desirable, but compatibility makes them sustainable. The dangerous part is that chemistry can make incompatibility feel like a challenge instead of a warning. People start trying to force peace with someone who keeps disturbing it. They confuse longing with love, tension with passion, and uncertainty with mystery. Real connection needs more than a spark. A spark can start a fire, but without structure, that fire can burn what it was meant to warm. Chemistry may pull two people together, but compatibility decides whether staying close will feel like safety or survival. Avoided conversations create painful endings. Avoided conversations create painful endings because silence does not remove truth. It only delays the moment truth must be faced. Many relationships, friendships, families, and partnerships do not break because one big thing happened suddenly. They break because small things were left unsaid for too long. A hurt feeling was swallowed. A boundary was not expressed. A misunderstanding was ignored. A disappointment was hidden behind, "I'm fine." Over time, the things people refuse to discuss become the things that slowly separate them. The danger of avoided conversations is that they look harmless in the beginning. No argument happens. No one raises their voice. No uncomfortable moment has to be faced. But underneath that quietness, resentment begins to grow. One person starts assuming, the other starts withdrawing. Trust becomes weaker because honesty is no longer moving freely between them. Many people avoid conversations because they fear conflict, rejection, blame, or emotional exposure. They think silence is safer than saying what they truly feel. But what is not spoken does not disappear. It becomes distance. It becomes cold replies. It becomes overthinking. It becomes sudden anger over small things because the real issue has been buried for too long. The painful truth is that many endings are only shocking because the conversations that could have prevented them never happened. By the time someone finally says, "I cannot do this anymore," the relationship may already be emotionally tired beyond repair. Hard conversations are uncomfortable, but avoided conversations are often more damaging. Speaking early can feel risky, but silence can cost everything. A conversation may create tension for a moment, but avoidance can create regret for years. Sometimes the ending was not caused by the truth being spoken. It was caused by the truth being avoided until love, patience, and trust had nothing left to stand on. Over-explaining often means self-convincing. Over-explaining often means self-convincing because when a person is truly at peace with their choice, they usually do not need to keep decorating it with endless reasons. They can explain clearly, calmly, and briefly. But when someone keeps repeating the same point, adding unnecessary details, defending every angle, and trying too hard to make the story sound complete, it may reveal that they are not only trying to convince others, they are trying to convince themselves. This happens when the mind is fighting doubt. A person may know deep down that something feels wrong, unfair, unhealthy, or uncertain, but instead of facing that discomfort, they build a wall of words around it. They explain why they stayed, why they tolerated it, why they acted that way, why they had no choice, why it was not that serious, or why everyone else misunderstood. The more fragile the truth feels inside them, the more words they may use to protect it. Over-explaining can also come from fear of judgment. Some people have been made to feel guilty for their needs, choices, or boundaries, so they explain too much because they are afraid of being misunderstood. But sometimes, the explanation becomes less about clarity and more about emotional survival. The painful truth is that over-explaining often exposes inner conflict. The person may sound certain, but their need to keep proving the point shows that something inside them is still unsettled. Peace does not usually beg to be believed. Real confidence can speak without chasing approval. It does not need to force everyone into agreement. When someone keeps explaining long after the message is clear, listen carefully. Sometimes, the extra words are not for you. They are for the part of them that still does not fully believe what they are saying. People respect what has limits. People respect what has limits because unlimited access often teaches people to take things lightly. When something is always available, always forgiving, always waiting, always open, and always willing to adjust, many people slowly stop seeing its value. They may not mean to become careless, but human nature often treats what has no boundary as something that does not need to be protected. This is why people sometimes value your presence more when you are not endlessly reachable. They listen more when your time is not automatically theirs. They become more careful when your forgiveness is not guaranteed without change. They think twice when your kindness has standards. Limits remind people that access to you is not ownership of you. A person with no limits may be praised at first. People may call them kind, patient, humble, understanding, or selfless. But if that person keeps giving without boundaries, others may begin to expect sacrifice instead of appreciating it. What was once seen as generosity becomes treated like duty. What was once received with gratitude becomes demanded with entitlement. This is why limits are not cruelty, they are structure. They teach people how to approach you. They show what is acceptable, what is not, what you will give freely, and what you will no longer lose yourself to provide. Without limits, even love can become draining because one person may keep taking while the other keeps disappearing. The painful truth is that some people only learn your value when your access changes. They do not respect what they can use endlessly without consequence. A limit forces awareness. It says, "I can care about you without abandoning myself." People respect what has limits because limits turn your presence from something assumed into something that must be honored. Repeated jokes often reveal hidden truth. Repeated jokes often reveal hidden truth because people sometimes use humor to say what they are afraid to say directly. A joke can become a safe hiding place for a real feeling, a hidden desire, a buried resentment, an insecurity, or a truth someone does not want to fully own. If the other person reacts badly, they can quickly say, "I was only joking." But if the reaction is soft, they may feel secretly relieved that the truth escaped without serious consequences. This is why repeated jokes deserve attention. One joke may mean nothing. It may be random, playful, or harmless. But when someone keeps joking about the same thing again and again, there is often something underneath it. They may joke about leaving because part of them feels trapped. They may joke about being unwanted because they secretly fear rejection. They may joke about your flaws because resentment is leaking out. They may joke about cheating, failure, loneliness, jealousy, or insecurity because humor gives the truth a costume. The strange thing about jokes is that they lower people's defenses. A serious statement can create confrontation, but a joke can enter the room quietly. It allows someone to test how much truth the relationship can handle. It lets them reveal something without fully exposing themselves, but repeated jokes can also become harmful. Some people use humor to insult you without taking responsibility. They hide cruelty behind laughter, then make you feel too sensitive for noticing the pain inside the joke. This is why you must listen beyond the laugh. Ask yourself why the same subject keeps returning. Sometimes, a repeated joke is not just comedy. It is a confession looking for permission, a wound asking to be noticed, or a truth trying to escape without being punished. People judge desires they secretly suppress. People judge desires they secretly suppress because it is easier to condemn someone else's freedom than to admit your own hunger. When a person has been taught to hide what they want, fear what they feel, or feel ashamed of their own longing, they may begin attacking those who express that same desire openly. The judgment is not always about the other person. Sometimes it is the sound of an inner conflict that has never been healed. This is why people can become harsh toward confidence, ambition, beauty, attention, love, money, success, pleasure, independence, or emotional honesty. They may call someone arrogant for being confident, greedy for wanting more, desperate for wanting love, dramatic for expressing pain, or selfish for choosing themselves. On the surface, it sounds like morality, but underneath, it may be frustration. They are watching someone live openly in a place where they still feel trapped. Suppressed desire does not disappear. It becomes criticism, bitterness, sarcasm, envy, or moral superiority. A person may pretend they are above something when the truth is they were never allowed to want it freely. So instead of facing the grief of their own denial, they turn their discomfort outward. The painful truth is that some people judge not because they are pure, but because they are afraid of what they recognize. Your courage to want something may awaken the part of them they have spent years silencing. This is why judgment often says more about the judge than the judged. When someone repeatedly attacks a desire that harms no one, listen carefully. They may not be exposing someone else's weakness. They may be revealing the private longing they were taught to bury, reject, and punish inside themselves. Needing to be right can destroy closeness. Needing to be right can destroy closeness because relationships are not built only on facts, logic, and winning arguments. They are built on safety, humility, listening, and the ability to care about someone's heart even when you disagree with their perspective. When a person always needs to prove they are right, every conversation slowly becomes a competition. The goal is no longer understanding. The goal becomes victory. This is why some people win arguments but lose emotional connection. They correct every detail. They defend every intention. They explain why the other person misunderstood. They focus on proving their point so strongly that they forget someone is standing there feeling hurt, unheard, or dismissed. In their mind, they are protecting truth. But in the other person's heart, they may be creating distance. The need to be right often comes from insecurity, pride, fear of blame, or the belief that admitting fault means losing power. So instead of saying, "I see how that affected you," they say, "That is not what happened." Instead of asking, "What did you need from me?" they say, "You are taking it the wrong way." The conversation becomes cold because the ego keeps stepping in front of love. Closeness requires more than being correct. Sometimes it requires being gentle. It requires allowing another person's feelings to exist without immediately turning them into a debate. It requires knowing when connection matters more than proving a point. The painful truth is that some people do not realize they are pushing others away until the silence becomes permanent. They were so focused on being right that they forgot to be kind. And many relationships do not die because one person had the wrong argument. They die because someone kept choosing pride over understanding. People rarely outgrow what they avoid. People rarely outgrow what they avoid because growth requires contact with the truth. A person may try to move on from pain, fear, shame, anger, jealousy, regret, or insecurity without ever facing it directly, but avoidance only pushes the issue deeper into the background. It does not remove the wound. It teaches the wound to speak through reactions, patterns, silence, distance, overthinking, and repeated mistakes. This is why people can leave a place and still carry the same problem into the next one. They leave a relationship but repeat the same attachment. They change friends but keep the same fear of rejection. They start a new job but still carry the same self-doubt. They promise to become better but keep avoiding the uncomfortable mirror that would show them where the real work begins. Avoidance can feel like progress because it creates distance. The person may stop talking about the issue, stop seeing the person, stop thinking deeply about what happened, or fill their life with distractions. For a while, it may seem like they have moved forward. But anything unprocessed waits for a trigger. One conversation, one rejection, one silence, one familiar feeling. And suddenly the old wound returns with the same strength. The painful truth is that time alone does not heal what honesty refuses to touch. Time can soften pain, but it cannot teach the lesson a person keeps running from. What is avoided becomes repeated because the mind keeps trying to complete what was left unfinished. Real growth begins when a person stops confusing escape with healing. You do not outgrow fear by pretending it is not there. You outgrow it by facing it long enough to understand what it has been protecting, controlling, and stealing from your life. Patience means not controlling the outcome. Patience means not controlling the outcome because true patience is not just waiting. It is waiting without trying to force life, people, timing, or results to obey your fear. Many people think they are patient because they have not walked away yet, but inside they are still pushing, checking, worrying, manipulating, overthinking, and trying to make everything happen exactly when and how they want it. That is not patience. That is anxiety wearing a calm face. Real patience requires surrender, and surrender is difficult because it makes the ego feel powerless. The ego wants guarantees. It wants proof. It wants timelines. It wants to know that effort will be rewarded, love will be returned, healing will happen quickly, and the future will unfold safely. But life rarely gives that kind of certainty, so patience becomes the quiet discipline of doing your part without obsessively trying to control the rest. This is why patience can feel painful. It exposes how much of your peace depends on control. You may say you trust the process, but still panic when the process moves slowly. You may say you believe in growth, but still become restless when results are not immediate. You may say you are letting go, but still keep checking whether what you released is coming back. The painful truth is that control can feel responsible, but sometimes it is only fear refusing to sit still. Patience asks you to stop treating delay like rejection, silence like failure, and uncertainty like danger. Real patience does not mean doing nothing. It means acting with wisdom, then allowing time to reveal what pressure cannot force. It is the strength to remain steady when the outcome has not yet explained itself. Many want understanding, few want full exposure. Many want understanding, few want full exposure, because being understood sounds comforting until it requires being completely seen. Most people want someone to understand their pain, their choices, their silence, their reactions, and the hidden reasons behind their behavior. They want someone to look at them with patience instead of judgment. But when real understanding gets close, it often starts touching places they have spent years hiding. This is where the fear begins. To be truly understood, a person must allow someone to see more than the polished version. They must allow someone to see the insecurity beneath the confidence, the fear beneath the anger, the loneliness beneath the independence, the wound beneath the control, and the shame beneath the excuses. That kind of exposure can feel dangerous because it removes the protection of performance. Many people want to be accepted, but not fully revealed. They want love, but not the risk of someone knowing exactly where they are fragile. They want closeness, but not the discomfort of emotional nakedness. So they give pieces of themselves, carefully selected parts that feel safe enough to show, while hiding the parts they believe could make someone leave. The painful truth is that true understanding requires courage from both sides. One person must be willing to listen deeply, and the other must be willing to stop performing long enough to be known. But not everyone is ready for that. Some people would rather remain partly misunderstood than risk being fully exposed. This is why intimacy can frighten even those who crave it. Being understood is beautiful, but being fully seen means losing the mask. And for many people, the mask has been their safest home for a long time. Kind people can still be unavailable. Kind people can still be unavailable because goodness does not always mean emotional capacity. Someone can be gentle, respectful, thoughtful, generous, and sincere, yet still be unable to give the closeness, consistency, honesty, or emotional presence a relationship needs. This is one of the most confusing truths about human nature, because people often assume that if someone is kind, they must also be safe to attach to. But kindness and availability are not the same thing. A kind person may care about you deeply and still not know how to open up. They may listen to you, help you, encourage you, and treat you warmly, but still keep a wall around the most honest parts of themselves. They may want connection, but fear dependence. They may enjoy closeness, but withdraw when things become too real. They may be loving in moments, but inconsistent in commitment. This is why unavailable kindness can hurt so quietly. It does not always feel like rejection at first. It feels like hope. The person gives enough warmth to make you believe something deeper is possible, but not enough presence to make you feel secure. You keep holding on because they are not cruel. They are not careless in an obvious way. They may even make you feel special when they are present, but their absence, distance, or emotional limitation keeps reminding you that kindness alone cannot carry a bond. The painful truth is that someone can have a good heart and still not be ready for real intimacy. They can mean well and still leave you lonely. They can care and still not show up in the way your heart needs. Kindness matters, but availability matters too. Love cannot grow fully where warmth appears in pieces, but presence never becomes steady. Overgiving often tries to earn love. Overgiving often tries to earn love because some people learned early that being useful was the safest way to be wanted. They give their time, energy, money, attention, forgiveness, advice, emotional support, and patience, not always because they have plenty to give, but because a hidden part of them believes love must be purchased through sacrifice. They may not say it out loud, but deep inside, the fear is there. If I stop giving, will they still choose me? This is why overgivers often struggle to rest. They feel guilty when they have needs. They feel selfish when they say no. They feel anxious when someone is disappointed in them. Their kindness becomes tied to survival because being helpful gives them a role. If they are the strong one, the patient one, the forgiving one, or the one who always shows up, then maybe they will not be abandoned. But overgiving does not always create love. Sometimes it creates dependence, entitlement, and silent resentment. The person receiving may grow used to endless access, while the giver slowly disappears behind their own generosity. They keep pouring from an empty place, hoping one day someone will notice how tired they are and finally love them properly. The painful truth is that love earned through exhaustion is not love that feels safe. If someone only values you when you are useful, they are not loving your heart. They are loving the service your heart provides. Real love does not require you to keep bleeding emotionally just to prove you care. It does not punish you for having limits. It does not disappear when you stop overextending yourself. Healing begins when an overgiver learns that being loved should not require constant self-abandonment. Some fear losing people more than they enjoy them. Some fear losing people more than they enjoy them because attachment can become stronger than peace. A person may no longer feel happy, safe, respected, or emotionally nourished in a relationship, but the thought of losing the person still terrifies them. They are not always holding on because the connection is good. Sometimes they are holding on because absence feels more frightening than discomfort. This is why people stay in bonds that drain them. They worry about being alone, starting over, feeling forgotten, watching the other person move on, or facing the silence that comes after separation. The fear becomes so loud that they stop asking whether the person actually brings joy into their life. They only ask, "What will I do if they leave?" When fear becomes the foundation of attachment, love begins to feel like survival. The person starts tolerating less than they deserve because keeping someone feels more important than being treated well by them. They forgive too quickly, explain away pain, ignore disrespect, and call it loyalty, when deep down, they may simply be afraid of the emptiness that leaving would create. The painful truth is that some people are more attached to someone's presence than to the quality of that presence. They do not enjoy the relationship as much as they fear losing the routine, the identity, the hope, or the emotional familiarity attached to it. Real love should not feel like constantly preventing abandonment. It should not make you spend more time fearing loss than feeling peace. When someone fears losing people more than they enjoy them, they may need to ask a harder question. Am I staying because this connection is healthy, or because I do not know who I am without it? Anger often protects unspoken sadness. Anger often protects unspoken sadness because sadness can feel too vulnerable to show. When someone is hurt, disappointed, rejected, ignored, betrayed, or made to feel powerless, the first emotion they reveal may not be the softest one. They may raise their voice, become cold, act defensive, insult, withdraw, or react sharply. From the outside, it looks like anger is the main feeling. But underneath, there may be sadness they do not know how to express safely. Anger gives people a sense of strength when sadness makes them feel exposed. Sadness says, "That hurt me." Anger says, "You should not have done that." Sadness asks to be held. Anger tries to take control. Sadness reveals need. Anger hides need behind force. That is why many people choose anger without realizing it. It feels less humiliating than admitting they wanted care, respect, reassurance, love, or understanding. This is especially true for people who were never taught how to speak pain gently. If they learned that crying was weakness, needing comfort was shameful, or expressing hurt led to dismissal, anger becomes their emotional shield. It protects the tender place they believe the world will not handle kindly. The painful truth is that anger can push away the very closeness sadness was asking for. A person may attack when they actually want to be understood. They may become harsh when they really feel wounded. They may create distance when their heart is secretly asking, "Do I matter to you?" This is why anger should not always be read only as aggression. Sometimes it is grief with armor on. Sometimes it is sadness that never found a safe language. Sometimes the loud reaction is protecting a quiet wound that still wants to be seen. Busyness often disguises emptiness. Busyness often disguises emptiness because movement can make a person feel like they are not alone with themselves. When someone fills every hour with work, errands, messages, goals, noise, helping others, entertainment, or endless responsibilities, it can look like discipline from the outside. People may call them hardworking, focused, ambitious, reliable, or strong. But sometimes, constant busyness is not strength. Sometimes it is avoidance with a full schedule. The quiet moments are where the truth begins to speak. When everything slows down, a person may start feeling the loneliness they ignored, the sadness they buried, the dreams they postponed, the relationships that feel shallow, or the question they are afraid to answer. Is this life actually fulfilling me? So they stay busy because stillness feels too honest. Busyness can become a socially accepted escape. Unlike addiction, anger, or drama, it often gets praised. People admire the person who is always doing something, but they may not see that activity has become a shield. The person is not always building a life. Sometimes they are running from the emptiness inside the life they already built. The painful truth is that a full calendar does not always mean a full heart. A person can be productive and still feel hollow. They can be surrounded by tasks and still feel unseen. They can achieve more and still avoid the deeper need for meaning, rest, love, or self-honesty. Real fulfillment is not proven by how busy someone looks. It is felt in the quiet, when there is nothing to perform, nothing to chase, and nothing to distract from the self waiting underneath. People chase relief more than happiness. People chase relief more than happiness because relief feels immediate, while happiness often requires patience, discipline, healing, and uncomfortable honesty. Many people think they are searching for joy, peace, love, success, or a better life, But in the moment, they often choose whatever makes the pressure stop fastest. They choose the message that calms their anxiety, the distraction that silences their thoughts, the person who removes loneliness for a while, the excuse that protects them from guilt, or the habit that gives them temporary escape. Relief is powerful because it works quickly. It does not ask a person to become wiser. It does not ask them to face the root of the pain. It simply lowers the emotional volume. That is why people return to things they know are not good for them. They are not always choosing happiness. They are choosing a break from discomfort. This is why someone may go back to a relationship that keeps hurting them, not because it makes them truly happy, but because the silence without that person feels unbearable. Someone may procrastinate, not because delay brings joy, but because it gives relief from fear. Someone may overeat, overspend, scroll endlessly, or seek attention, not because these things fulfill them, but because they soften something painful for a moment. The painful truth is that relief can become a trap when it replaces healing. It can make a person feel better while keeping their life the same. Happiness often requires facing what relief helps them avoid. Real happiness is deeper than emotional escape. It is not just the absence of pressure. It is the presence of meaning, peace, self-respect, and honest living. But many people never reach it because they keep choosing what soothes them now over what would free them later. Inconsistent love creates strong attachment. Inconsistent love creates strong attachment because the human heart becomes deeply hooked on uncertainty. When someone gives warmth one moment and distance the next, attention one day and silence the next, affection today and coldness tomorrow, the mind begins to chase the version of them that felt loving. The connection becomes less about peace and more about trying to return to the moment when everything felt safe. This is why inconsistent love can feel more powerful than steady love. Steady love feels calm, predictable, and secure, but inconsistent love creates emotional highs and lows that can become addictive. When affection disappears, the person feels anxious, confused, and desperate for reassurance. When affection returns, the relief feels intense, almost like proof that the love is real. But often, what feels like love is actually the nervous system recovering from fear. The painful part is that inconsistency keeps hope alive. If someone were cold all the time, it might be easier to leave. But because they sometimes become gentle, sweet, present, or deeply affectionate, the heart keeps waiting for that version to return permanently. The good moments become emotional evidence, while the bad moments are excused, minimized, or explained away. This is how people become attached to someone who does not truly make them feel safe. They are not only loving the person, they are chasing the reward after the pain. They are trying to earn consistency from someone who keeps making love feel uncertain. Real love does not need to keep disappearing to feel valuable. It does not make you beg for emotional safety. Inconsistent love creates strong attachment because it trains the heart to confuse relief with connection and survival with devotion. People value what they almost lost. People value what they almost lost because nearness to absence wakes the heart up. When something is always present, always available, always forgiving, or always within reach, people can begin to treat it as ordinary. They may not mean to be careless, but familiarity can dull gratitude. The person, opportunity, health, peace, love, or support becomes part of the background until the possibility of losing it suddenly makes its value impossible to ignore. This is why people often become more emotional when something is about to leave. A relationship they neglected suddenly feels precious when distance appears. A parent they ignored becomes deeply important when illness enters. A peaceful life they complained about becomes a blessing when chaos arrives. A chance they delayed becomes urgent when the door begins to close. Loss, or even the threat of loss, removes the illusion that something will always be there. The painful truth is that human beings often recognize value late. They get used to kindness. They become careless with loyalty. They postpone appreciation because they assume there will be more time. But almost losing something breaks that illusion. It forces the mind to imagine life without what it took for granted, and that imagination can feel like grief arriving early. Sometimes people do not change because they understand love. They change because absence frightens them. They start calling, apologizing, showing effort, or paying attention only when they realize access is no longer guaranteed. But almost losing something should not be the only reason value appears. The deeper lesson is learning to honor what is still present before it becomes a memory. Because the saddest appreciation is the one that arrives only after neglect has already done its damage. Standards rise when loneliness loses power. Standards rise when loneliness loses power because many people lower their standards when they are afraid of being alone. They tolerate inconsistency, disrespect, emotional crumbs, weak effort, confusing behavior, and shallow connection, not because they truly accept it, but because the thought of having nobody feels heavier than the pain of having the wrong person. Loneliness can make almost anything look better than emptiness. This is why people sometimes stay attached to someone who gives them very little. They call it patience, they call it loyalty, they call it understanding. But underneath, fear may be quietly making the decision. The fear says, what if this is all I can get? What if nobody else comes? What if leaving means I will be forgotten? So they keep accepting less than they need, because absence feels more frightening than disappointment. But something powerful happens when loneliness loses control. A person begins to realize that being alone is not the same as being unloved, unwanted, or incomplete. They discover that silence can be peaceful, that their own company can be safe, and that not every empty space needs to be filled quickly. Once loneliness stops feeling like punishment, they stop treating any attention as a blessing. That is when standards rise naturally. They no longer beg for consistency. They require it. They no longer chase people who confuse them. They step back. They no longer confuse being chosen with being valued. They start asking, does this connection actually honor me? The painful truth is that fear lowers standards faster than love ever should. But when someone becomes comfortable enough within themselves, they stop accepting relationships that only protect them from loneliness while starving them of peace. Freedom begins when being alone feels better than being poorly loved. Reactions reveal wounds. Faster than words. Reactions reveal wounds faster than words because people can control what they say more easily than what they feel when something touches an old pain. A person may describe themselves as calm, healed, mature, unbothered, or emotionally stable. But when the right trigger appears, their reaction may tell a deeper story. A small delay, a different tone, a harmless question, a bit of criticism, or a moment of distance can suddenly awaken something much older than the present situation. This is why some reactions feel bigger than the moment deserves. Someone may become defensive because correction once felt like humiliation. Someone may panic over silence because silence once meant abandonment. Someone may become angry when ignored because invisibility has followed them for years. Someone may shut down during conflict because speaking up once made things worse. The reaction is not always about what just happened. Sometimes it is about every similar wound the body still remembers. Words can be polished. People can explain themselves beautifully. They can say they are fine, say they have moved on, say they do not care, or say something does not bother them. But reactions often bypass the performance. They reveal where fear still lives, where trust is still fragile, where shame still burns, and where healing has not fully reached. The painful truth is that people often expose their wounds before they understand them. They may hurt others through reactions they have not learned to read in themselves. That is why self-awareness matters. A reaction is not always a flaw. Sometimes it is a message. It says, there is something here that still needs attention. To understand people deeply, do not only listen to their explanations. Watch what makes them overreact, withdraw, defend, chase, freeze, or break. Reactions often reveal the wound long before words are brave enough to confess it. Peace can feel boring after survival. Peace can feel boring after survival because the body can become addicted to emotional intensity. When someone has spent years dealing with stress, conflict, uncertainty, disappointment, fear, or constant pressure, their nervous system learns to treat chaos as normal. It becomes used to scanning for danger, solving problems, preparing for the next disappointment, and living with tension in the background. So when peace finally arrives, it may not feel like relief at first. It may feel empty. This is why some people struggle to accept calm relationships, quiet seasons, stable friendships, or ordinary days. Nothing is wrong, but something feels missing. There is no emotional storm to decode, no mixed signal to analyze, no person to chase, no crisis to fix, no sudden shift to prepare for. The mind begins to confuse peace with boredom because it has learned to associate aliveness with intensity. Survival mode trains people to feel useful when they are fighting something. They know who they are when they are enduring, rescuing, proving, defending, or holding everything together. But peace asks them to exist without struggle. That can feel unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable, because they are no longer being powered by emergency. The painful truth is that some people recreate chaos because calmness feels too strange to trust. They start arguments, chase unavailable people, overthink simple situations, or sabotage good things, not because they truly want pain, but because peace does not yet feel like home. Real healing requires learning that calm is not emptiness, stability is not dullness, safety is not weakness. Peace may feel boring at first because the body is still detoxing from survival. But with time, the quiet becomes less frightening. It becomes the place where the soul finally learns it does not have to suffer to feel alive. The need to be chosen can hide disrespect. The need to be chosen can hide disrespect because longing can make people ignore how they are being treated. When someone desperately wants to be wanted, selected, loved, remembered, or prioritized, they may focus more on receiving attention than on the quality of that attention. They become so invested in being picked that they forget to ask whether the person choosing them is actually treating them with care. This is how people begin accepting less than they deserve. A delayed reply becomes acceptable because at least the person replied. A small compliment feels powerful because affection has been rare. A little effort feels huge because expectations have already been lowered. Someone who gives confusion, inconsistency, or emotional crumbs can still feel important when the heart is starving to feel chosen. The painful truth is that the desire to be chosen can make disrespect look like a challenge instead of a warning. Instead of saying, "This person is not treating me well," someone may think, "How can I make them value me more?" They begin performing, proving, waiting, forgiving, explaining, and shrinking, hoping one day the person will finally see their worth. But love that requires you to beg for basic respect is already teaching you to abandon yourself. Being chosen is not always the same as being valued. Someone can choose your attention, your body, your kindness, your emotional support, or your availability without choosing your dignity. They may want access to you without honoring you. Real love does not make you feel grateful for scraps. It does not turn respect into something you must earn through patience and pain. The moment being chosen becomes more important than being respected. The heart becomes vulnerable to accepting almost anything that feels like affection. Some prefer lies that let them sleep. Some prefer lies that let them sleep because truth often demands more than awareness. It demands action. A person may already feel that something is wrong, that someone is not honest, that a relationship is fading, that a dream is dying, or that they are no longer happy in the life they keep defending. But instead of facing that truth, they choose the explanation that helps them rest at night, not because they are foolish, but because the truth would force them to change something they are not ready to lose. Lies can feel gentle when reality feels too heavy. A lie can say, "They are just busy," when the truth may be, "They are no longer making effort." A lie can say, "I am fine," when the truth may be, "I am slowly breaking." A lie can say, "Things will change soon," when the pattern has already shown what it is. The lie becomes a pillow. It softens the pain just enough for the person to keep going. The danger is that comforting lies do not remove reality. They only delay the moment reality becomes impossible to ignore. The more a person depends on a lie for peace, the more painful the awakening becomes. What could have been faced early as discomfort may later arrive as heartbreak, regret, or collapse. This is why some people defend illusions with surprising anger. The lie is not just a belief anymore. It has become their emotional shelter. To challenge it feels like taking away the only thing helping them survive. But a lie that lets you sleep can also keep you trapped. Sometimes the truth hurts not because it is cruel, but because it is trying to wake you up before your whole life becomes built around denial. Those who never admit fault make others carry pain. Those who never admit fault make others carry pain because accountability has to go somewhere. When a person refuses to say, "I was wrong, I hurt you, I should have handled that better," or "I understand why that affected you," the wound does not disappear. It gets pushed onto the person who was already hurt. They are left carrying the injury, the confusion, the explanation, and sometimes even the guilt for reacting to what was done to them. This is why relationships with people who never admit fault feel emotionally exhausting. Every conflict turns into a maze. You bring up a problem, and suddenly you are defending your tone. You explain your hurt, and suddenly they are the victim. You ask for accountability, and they remind you of your past mistakes. The conversation becomes less about repair and more about escaping blame. The painful thing is that fault denial makes the hurt person question themselves. They begin wondering if they overreacted, if they explained badly, if they asked for too much, or if their pain is unfair. Over time, they may stop speaking up because every attempt to be heard becomes another burden. A person who never admits fault protects their pride by making others carry the emotional cost. They avoid shame, but someone else absorbs the damage. They keep their self-image clean while the other person becomes heavy with unresolved pain. Real accountability is not humiliation. It is emotional maturity. It says, "My pride is not more important than your pain." Without that, love becomes unsafe, because a relationship where one person can never be wrong becomes a place where the other person is always forced to suffer alone. Effort proves love. When words fail. Effort proves love when words fail because words can be beautiful without being dependable. A person can say they care, say they miss you, say you matter, say they will change, and say they never meant to hurt you. But when those words are not followed by action, the heart eventually stops trusting the sound of them. Love cannot live forever on promises that never become behavior. This is why effort becomes so powerful. Effort is love made visible. It is the message sent even when life is busy. It is the apology followed by better choices. It is the attention given without being begged for. It is the patience shown during hard conversations. It is the willingness to understand what hurts you instead of only defending why they did it. Effort tells the heart, "I am not just speaking, I am showing you." Words often fail when trust has already been damaged. After repeated disappointment, even the sweetest sentence can feel weak. The person may say the right thing, but the heart remembers the pattern. It remembers the times words came easily and change did not follow. That is why effort becomes the language trust can understand again. The painful truth is that many people want their words to be accepted as proof, because words cost less than effort. Effort requires time, humility, consistency, sacrifice, and self-awareness. It requires a person to become different, not just sound sorry. Real love does not only explain itself. It shows up, it repairs, it adjusts, it learns. It makes the other person feel chosen in ways that do not need constant translation. When words fail, effort becomes the clearest confession. Because anyone can say love. Not everyone is willing to live it. People outgrow lives before leaving them. People outgrow lives before leaving them because the soul often changes before the situation does. A person may still live in the same house, keep the same routine, answer the same calls, work the same job, stay in the same relationship, or move among the same people, while something inside them has already begun to detach. From the outside, everything may look normal, but inwardly, the old life no longer fits the person they are becoming. This is why leaving is not always the first sign of change. Sometimes the first sign is quiet discomfort. The conversations that once felt natural begin to feel empty. The habits that once brought comfort begin to feel heavy. The people they once tried to please begin to feel distant from their truth. They may not hate the life they are in, but they can feel that it no longer speaks to the version of them that is waking up. Outgrowing a life can feel confusing because nothing dramatic has to happen. There may be no big betrayal, no sudden collapse, no clear villain, and no perfect explanation. The person simply starts feeling emotionally too large for the place they once squeezed themselves into. What once felt safe begins to feel limiting. What once felt familiar begins to feel like a cage. The painful truth is that people often stay long after they have outgrown something because leaving would make the inner change visible. It would require courage, honesty, and the grief of disappointing others, but growth often begins before departure. A person may physically remain while emotionally preparing to step into a new chapter. Sometimes, leaving is not the moment someone changes. It is the moment the outside world finally catches up with the change that already happened inside. Values appear when ego or comfort is threatened. Values appear when ego or comfort is threatened because it is easy for people to sound principled when nothing is costing them anything. Anyone can claim to value honesty, patience, loyalty, kindness, humility, discipline, faithfulness, or fairness when life is calm and their pride is untouched. But the real test begins when keeping those values becomes uncomfortable. A person may say they value honesty until telling the truth makes them look bad. They may say they value loyalty until temptation offers them attention. They may say they value kindness until they are angry and have the power to wound someone with words. They may say they value humility until admitting fault threatens their ego. They may say they value growth until growth requires sacrifice, embarrassment, or discipline. This is why pressure reveals people more clearly than promises. Comfort allows people to perform the identity they want others to believe. Pressure exposes what they actually protect. When ego is threatened, you see whether someone chooses truth or image. When comfort is threatened, you see whether they choose principle or convenience. When desire is threatened, you see whether they choose discipline or impulse. The painful truth is that many people do not abandon their values loudly. They negotiate them quietly. They make exceptions. They justify small betrayals. They tell themselves this situation is different. They bend the rule just enough to protect what they want in the moment. But values are not proven by what someone says when everything is easy. They are proven by what remains when pride is bruised, comfort is interrupted, and selfish desire becomes available. A person's real values are not found in their speeches. They are found in the choices they make when doing the right thing costs them something. Many fear being ordinary more than unhappy. Many fear being ordinary more than unhappy because being ordinary feels like disappearing to them. They would rather carry stress, pressure, comparison, debt, exhaustion, fake confidence, or a life that does not feel peaceful than face the fear of being unseen. For some people, unhappiness is painful, but ordinariness feels humiliating. It makes them feel like they failed to become special enough to matter. This is why people chase lives they do not even enjoy. They chase status, attention, beauty, money, titles, admiration, popularity, or public success, not always because these things bring peace, but because they protect them from feeling insignificant. They may stay in careers that drain them, relationships that look good but feel empty, or lifestyles that impress others while quietly exhausting their spirit. The fear of being ordinary often begins with the belief that love, respect, and attention must be earned through achievement. If they are not impressive, they feel forgettable. If they are not admired, they feel invisible. If their life looks simple, they feel behind. So they keep performing, even when the performance costs them joy. The painful truth is that many people would rather be admired in pain than peaceful in simplicity. They confuse being noticed with being fulfilled. They confuse being exceptional with being worthy. But a life can look ordinary from the outside and still be deeply meaningful inside. Not every quiet life is a failed life. Not every simple person is wasted potential. Sometimes the need to be extraordinary becomes another prison. Because if someone cannot feel worthy without applause, they will keep sacrificing happiness just to avoid the shame of seeming average. True freedom begins when a person stops needing their life to look impressive before they allow it to feel honest. The heart accepts what the mind keeps solving. The heart accepts what the mind keeps solving because emotional truth often arrives before mental peace. Deep inside, a person may already know something is over, something has changed, someone is not coming back the same, or a situation will never become what they hoped it would be. The heart can feel the truth quietly. It can sense the distance, the shift, the loss, the ending, or the emptiness. But the mind does not always surrender so easily. The mind wants explanations. It wants reasons, proof, timelines, closure, and a clear answer that makes the pain feel fair. It keeps replaying conversations, reading old messages, studying small signs, wondering what could have been done differently, and trying to solve what the heart has already understood. This is why people can know the truth and still keep thinking about it endlessly. Acceptance has entered emotionally, but the mind is still looking for a way to undo it. This happens because the mind believes that if it thinks long enough, it can reduce the pain. It says, maybe there is another meaning. Maybe I missed something. Maybe I can still fix it. But some things are not puzzles. Some things are losses. Some things do not need more analysis. They need grief. The painful truth is that the mind often keeps working because it is afraid of feeling powerless. Solving gives the illusion of control. Acceptance asks you to stop fighting what has already become clear. Healing begins when the mind finally catches up with the heart, not because every question has been answered, but because the person becomes tired of reopening what truth has already closed. Sometimes peace comes when you stop trying to solve what your heart has already accepted. Unseen people often become performers. Unseen people often become performers because when someone feels invisible for too long, they may begin to create a version of themselves that is harder to ignore. They learn to entertain, impress, overachieve, dress a certain way, speak a certain way, act mysterious, act strong, act funny, act unbothered, or become useful to everyone around them. Not always because that is who they truly are, but because being noticed starts to feel like proof that they exist. When a person is not seen emotionally, they may start chasing visibility in other ways. If no one noticed their sadness, they may become the funny one. If no one valued their quiet effort, they may become the impressive one. If no one listened to their needs, they may become the dramatic one. If no one chose them naturally, they may become the attractive, successful, entertaining, or always available one. The painful truth is that performance can bring attention without bringing connection. People may clap, laugh, admire, depend on them, or praise them, but still never know the real person underneath. The performer becomes trapped in the role that finally made them visible. They fear that if they stop performing, people will stop caring. This is why some people feel lonely, even when everyone knows them. They are being watched, but not understood. They are being praised, but not held. They are being noticed for the image, while the hidden self remains untouched. Being unseen can make a person believe they must become more interesting before they deserve love. But real connection does not require constant performance. The heart does not only want attention, it wants someone to see the truth behind the act and stay without needing the show. Control often comes from past powerlessness. Control often comes from past powerlessness because people who once felt helpless often grow up trying to make sure they never feel that way again. When someone has lived through uncertainty, neglect, betrayal, humiliation, instability, or situations where their voice did not matter, they may begin to believe that safety only comes from control. If they can manage every detail, predict every outcome, and keep everyone within reach, maybe they will not be hurt the same way again. This is why controlling people are not always trying to be cruel. Sometimes they are afraid. They may control conversations because being misunderstood once cost them too much. They may control relationships because abandonment once broke something inside them. They may control plans because unpredictability once made life feel unsafe. They may control emotions because vulnerability once left them exposed. But control is a painful protector. It promises safety, yet often creates tension. It can make love feel like pressure, care feel like possession, and concern feel like restriction. The person may believe they are preventing pain, but they may actually be pushing others away. Their fear of losing control can become the very thing that damages the connection they are trying to protect. The painful truth is that control does not heal powerlessness. It only builds a stronger wall around it. A person may control everything around them and still feel unsafe inside because the original wound has not been comforted. They are not free. They are constantly managing life, so fear does not surprise them again. Healing begins when someone learns that safety is not the same as control. Real safety comes from trust, boundaries, self-awareness, and the strength to face uncertainty without turning every relationship into something that must be managed, monitored, or held too tightly. People want safety more than perfection. People want safety more than perfection because the heart does not truly rest around someone who only looks impressive. A person may be beautiful, intelligent, successful, charming, talented, wealthy, popular, or admired by everyone. But if they make others feel anxious, judged, uncertain, small, or emotionally unsafe, their perfection begins to lose its power. Human beings may be attracted to excellence, but they stay where their nervous system can breathe. Safety is what makes people open up. It is the feeling that you can speak without being mocked, make a mistake without being destroyed, express pain without being called dramatic, and show weakness without losing respect. Safety tells the heart, I do not have to perform here. That feeling is often more powerful than beauty, status, or perfection. This is why people can leave someone who looks perfect on paper and feel more peace with someone simpler but emotionally steady. The perfect person may impress the world, but the safe person comforts the soul. One creates admiration, the other creates trust. The painful truth is that many people spend years trying to become more impressive when what others truly need from them is emotional safety. They focus on looking strong, flawless, desirable, successful, or always right, while forgetting that closeness grows where people feel accepted, not examined. Perfection can create pressure. Safety creates rest. Perfection says, look at me. Safety says, you can be yourself here. And most people, beneath all their standards, dreams, and desires, are searching for somewhere they do not have to constantly defend their worth. People may admire perfection from a distance, but they attach to safety. Because love does not grow deepest where everything looks flawless. It grows where the heart finally stops preparing to be hurt. Long disappointment can turn people cold. Long disappointment can turn people cold because the heart can only keep hoping without protection for so long. When someone is let down once, they may forgive. When it happens again, they may try to understand. When it keeps happening, something inside them begins to change. They stop expecting. They stop explaining. They stop reaching with the same warmth, not because they suddenly stopped caring, but because caring has started to feel unsafe. Coldness is not always cruelty. Sometimes it is the result of warmth being mishandled too many times. A person who once gave chances freely may become guarded. Someone who once replied quickly may begin to delay. Someone who once expressed their feelings may grow quiet. Someone who once believed in people may start assuming disappointment before hope has a chance to breathe. This happens because repeated disappointment teaches the nervous system to protect itself. The person begins to believe that softness will only make them vulnerable to more pain, so they build distance. They lower emotional expectations. They act unbothered, not because they feel nothing, but because feeling too much has cost them too often. The painful truth is that people do not usually become cold overnight. They become cold after too many ignored messages, broken promises, empty apologies, one-sided efforts, and moments where their heart was left waiting without care. What looks like emotional distance may actually be emotional exhaustion. This is why you should not take someone's warmth for granted. A loving person can become quiet when love keeps meeting disappointment. A patient person can stop trying when patience keeps being abused. Long disappointment does not always destroy love immediately. Sometimes it simply teaches the heart to stop offering itself where it keeps returning wounded. One person can be lesson or blessing. One person can be lesson or blessing because not everyone enters your life for the same purpose. Some people come to love you, support you, strengthen you, and remind you what safety feels like. Others come to expose your wounds, test your boundaries, reveal your patterns, or teach you what you must never keep tolerating. The difficult part is that, at the beginning, both can feel meaningful. A blessing often brings peace with its presence. It does not mean the person is perfect, but they make your life feel lighter, clearer, safer, or more honest. They encourage the better parts of you without forcing you to abandon yourself. They respect your heart, protect your trust, and make growth feel possible. A blessing does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it is simply the person whose consistency helps your nervous system rest. A lesson is different. A lesson often arrives through pain, confusion, disappointment, betrayal, rejection, or imbalance. It may look like love at first, but over time, it reveals something you need to understand. Maybe it teaches you that chemistry is not compatibility. Maybe it teaches you that overgiving does not create love. Maybe it teaches you that ignoring red flags only delays heartbreak. Maybe it teaches you that peace should not require constant self-betrayal. The painful truth is that people often try to turn lessons into blessings because they do not want the pain to feel wasted. They keep holding on, hoping the person who wounded them will also become the person who heals them. But not everyone who teaches you is meant to stay. Sometimes the blessing is the love that stays gentle. Sometimes the lesson is the pain that makes you wiser. And sometimes the hardest growth comes from finally knowing the difference. Illusions survive because reality demands action. Illusions survive because reality demands action, and many people are not ready for what truth will require from them. An illusion is not always ignorance. Sometimes it is protection. It gives a person a softer version of life to hold on to when the real version feels too painful, too costly, or too disruptive to face. It lets them keep hoping without deciding. It lets them keep staying without admitting they are unhappy. It lets them keep trusting someone without confronting the signs that trust is being broken. Reality is different. Reality does not only reveal what is happening, it asks, "Now what will you do?" That is why people defend illusions so strongly. If they admit the relationship is unhealthy, they may have to leave. If they admit someone has changed, they may have to grieve. If they admit they are wasting time, they may have to start again. If they admit they are not at peace, they may have to stop pretending. The painful truth is that illusions are comfortable because they delay responsibility. They allow someone to say, "Maybe it will get better," even when the pattern keeps proving otherwise. They allow someone to call pain patience, call fear loyalty, call denial hope, and call silence peace. But reality waits. It does not disappear because someone refuses to name it. It grows louder through repeated disappointment, emotional exhaustion, and the quiet feeling that something is wrong. People do not always cling to illusions because they are blind. They cling because truth will force movement, and movement may require loss, courage, conflict, or change. That is why illusions survive. They give people permission to stay still in a life that reality is already asking them to leave. Validation seekers often distrust themselves. Validation seekers often distrust themselves because they have not learned to feel safe inside their own judgment. They may ask for opinions, approval, reassurance, compliments, permission, and constant confirmation, not because they are weak, but because their inner voice does not feel strong enough to stand alone. They need someone outside them to say, "You are right, you are enough, you made the right choice," or "You are not wrong for feeling this way." This often begins when a person grows up being criticized, ignored, compared, dismissed, or made to question their own feelings. Over time, they stop trusting what they think, want, or sense. Instead of asking, "What do I believe?" they ask, "Will people approve?" Their confidence becomes dependent on reaction. If people praise them, they feel safe. If people are silent, they panic. If someone disagrees, they begin doubting themselves completely. The painful truth is that validation can feel comforting, but it becomes dangerous when it replaces self-trust. A person may keep asking others to confirm decisions their own soul has already made. They may stay in unhealthy situations because no one gave them permission to leave. They may change their personality, dreams, appearance, or opinions just to keep approval close. Validation seeking can become a quiet prison because the person is never fully free. Their peace depends on the mood, attention, and opinions of others. They are always checking if they are acceptable instead of learning to accept themselves. Real confidence begins when someone stops outsourcing their worth. It does not mean they never need encouragement. It means they no longer collapse when approval is absent. The deepest healing comes when a person finally trusts their own voice enough to stop begging the world to confirm what they already know. Discipline needs a strong reason. Discipline needs a strong reason because willpower alone is too weak to carry a person through discomfort for long. Many people say they want to change, improve, grow, save money, study harder, become healthier, build something meaningful, or break an old habit. They may even start with excitement, but when the process becomes boring, painful, slow, lonely, or inconvenient, excitement fades. That is when the real reason is tested. Discipline is not powered by mood. Mood changes too easily. Some days a person feels motivated, other days they feel tired, distracted, discouraged, or tempted to return to comfort. If their reason is shallow, they will quit as soon as the work stops feeling good. But when the reason is deep, discipline has roots. It reminds them why the sacrifice matters. This is why people often fail at goals they only want casually. They want the result, but they do not want it badly enough to change their daily behavior. They want success, but not enough to give up excuses. They want peace, but not enough to stop feeding chaos. They want health, but not enough to choose discomfort today for strength tomorrow. A strong reason gives pain meaning. It turns sacrifice into investment. It turns delayed pleasure into purpose. It turns ordinary effort into identity. The person is no longer just forcing themselves to act. They are protecting a future they deeply care about. The painful truth is that discipline without a strong reason becomes punishment, but discipline with a strong reason becomes devotion. People do not stay consistent because the path is easy. They stay consistent because the reason behind the path is stronger than the comfort trying to pull them back. Decisions feel hard because every choice deletes another life. Decisions feel hard because every choice deletes another life, and that is the hidden grief most people do not name. When someone chooses one path, they are not only saying yes to something, they are also saying no to many other versions of their future. Choosing one career means releasing other possible identities. Choosing one person means closing the door on other romantic stories. Choosing one city, one dream, one risk, one belief, or one direction means accepting that some lives will remain unlived. This is why even good decisions can feel heavy. A person may know what is right and still feel sadness. They may choose peace and still miss the chaos. They may choose growth and still grieve the comfort they left behind. They may choose themselves and still feel guilty for disappointing others. The difficulty is not always confusion. Sometimes it is mourning. The mind wants a perfect choice, one that gives everything and costs nothing. But life rarely works that way. Every decision carries a loss hidden inside it. Even staying where you are is a choice, and it quietly deletes the life you could have built by leaving, trying, speaking, risking, or beginning again. The painful truth is that many people delay decisions because delay lets them pretend every possibility is still alive. As long as they have not chosen, they can imagine all futures waiting for them. But time is also choosing. Silence is choosing. Avoidance is choosing. A decision becomes powerful when a person accepts the loss that comes with it. Maturity is not finding a path with no sacrifice. It is choosing the sacrifice that leads toward the life your deeper self can live with. Bitterness is often love with nowhere safe to go. Bitterness is often love with nowhere safe to go because many people do not become bitter from caring too little. They become bitter from caring deeply and feeling that their care was wasted, rejected, used, ignored, or betrayed. Bitterness is not always the absence of love. Sometimes it is love that kept reaching for someone, something, or some dream, and kept returning wounded. When a person gives loyalty and receives betrayal, their love has nowhere safe to rest. When they give effort and receive neglect, their tenderness begins to harden. When they keep forgiving and nothing changes, their hope slowly turns sour. They may still care, but the care becomes mixed with anger, disappointment, and grief. That mixture is what bitterness often is. Affection that could not stay soft because it was never protected. This is why bitter people may sound harsh, cold, or cynical, but underneath their words, there is often an old tenderness that was mishandled. They may say they do not care anymore, but their bitterness proves something once mattered deeply. If it had meant nothing, it would not still carry that emotional weight. The painful truth is that bitterness can make the heart feel powerful after feeling powerless. It gives pain a voice. It says, "I will not be foolish again." But if bitterness stays too long, it becomes a prison. It keeps love trapped in the place where it was hurt. Healing begins when a person stops letting old disappointment decide how much softness they are allowed to have. Love that had nowhere safe to go does not have to become bitterness forever. Sometimes, it only needs to be removed from unsafe hands and returned gently back to the self. Fear of abandonment can push people away. Fear of abandonment can push people away because the person who is most afraid of being left may begin acting in ways that make closeness harder to maintain. They may crave reassurance, love, attention, and consistency. But because they are afraid these things will disappear, they start testing them. They ask questions with hidden fear behind them. They read too deeply into silence. They panic over small changes in tone. They assume distance before distance is real. This fear often comes from old experiences where love felt unstable, conditional, sudden, or unsafe. Maybe someone important left without explanation. Maybe affection was given and withdrawn unpredictably. Maybe they had to earn attention, so now, even in a healthy connection, their nervous system keeps preparing for loss. The heart says, "Please stay," but the fear says, "Prove you will not leave." The painful part is that constant testing can exhaust the people who are trying to love them. They may accuse, withdraw, cling, overthink, demand proof, or create conflict just to see if the other person will still stay. But the more pressure they place on the relationship, the less safe the relationship begins to feel. The fear of being abandoned slowly creates the very distance they were trying to prevent. This does not mean their fear is fake. It means their fear needs healing, not control over another person. Love cannot breathe when it is always being examined for signs of disappearing. Real security begins when someone learns that not every pause is rejection, not every change is betrayal, and not every person is a repeat of the one who left. The fear of abandonment becomes less powerful when a person stops turning love into a constant test of survival. People are not hard to understand, just hard to see honestly. People are not hard to understand, just hard to see honestly, because most behavior begins to make sense when you stop looking at what people claim and start watching what they repeatedly protect, avoid, chase, fear, and defend. Human beings often reveal their truth long before they explain it. They show it in their reactions, their excuses, their silence, their patterns, their choices, and the way they treat people when nothing is at stake. The problem is not always that people are mysterious. The problem is that honesty can hurt. To see someone clearly, you may have to admit that their love is inconsistent, their apology lacks change, their kindness has limits, their loyalty depends on convenience, or their presence in your life is more familiar than healthy. That kind of truth can be painful, so the mind tries to soften it. This is why people often say, "I do not understand them," when deep down, they may understand more than they want to admit. They understand the distance. They understand the repeated disrespect. They understand the broken promises. They understand the lack of effort. But accepting that understanding would require a decision, and decisions can be frightening. The painful truth is that confusion sometimes protects attachment. As long as you call someone complicated, you do not have to call them careless. As long as you call the situation unclear, you do not have to face what the pattern has already made obvious. People become easier to understand when you stop editing their behavior through hope. Their actions are often speaking plainly. The difficult part is not reading the truth. The difficult part is accepting it without changing the story to protect your heart from what it already knows. You can be surrounded and still feel homeless. You can be surrounded and still feel homeless because home is not always a place filled with people. Sometimes home is the feeling of being known, safe, accepted, and emotionally rested. A person can sit in a room full of family, friends, coworkers, classmates, or admirers and still feel like no one truly sees them. They may be included in conversations, invited to places, needed by others, and recognized by many, yet still carry a private loneliness that no crowd can touch. This happens when presence exists without connection. People may know your name, but not your heart. They may enjoy your jokes, but not notice your sadness. They may depend on your strength, but never ask where you feel weak. They may love the version of you that performs, provides, smiles, or keeps things easy, while the real you remains hidden and untouched. The painful truth is that emotional homelessness often begins when a person has nowhere safe to be fully honest. They keep editing themselves to fit rooms that do not truly hold them. They laugh when they want to speak. They say they are fine when they are tired. They become useful, quiet, impressive, or agreeable just to keep belonging. But belonging that requires you to disappear is not home. It is only proximity. Real home is where your nervous system stops preparing to be misunderstood. It is where you do not have to earn softness by being perfect, useful, or entertaining. That is why loneliness can exist even in company. Sometimes the ache is not for more people. It is for one place, one person, or one connection where your real self can finally exhale without fear. Comfort zones can become decorated prisons. Comfort zones can become decorated prisons because what feels safe can slowly become the very thing that keeps a person trapped. At first, comfort feels protective. It gives routine, familiarity, predictability, and a sense of control. A person knows what to expect, how to behave, what to avoid, and how to survive inside that space. But over time, the same comfort that once protected them can begin to limit them. This is why people stay in places, habits, relationships, jobs, and identities that no longer help them grow. They may not be happy, but they are familiar with the pain. They may not feel alive, but they know the routine. They may want more, but more requires risk, and risk feels threatening compared to the comfort they already understand. A decorated prison does not always look painful from the outside. It may look stable, responsible, loyal, peaceful, or practical. The person may even convince themselves they are fine because nothing is visibly falling apart. But deep inside, they know they are living below their own possibility. They have made the cage look acceptable enough to stop questioning it. The painful truth is that people can become attached to their limitations when those limitations feel safe. They decorate the prison with excuses, memories, routines, and familiar people. They call it contentment when it may actually be fear. They call it patience when it may be avoidance. Real growth begins when a person realizes that safety without expansion can become slow suffocation. Comfort is not always the enemy, but comfort that keeps you from becoming who you are meant to become is not peace. It is confinement with softer walls. Sometimes the door has been open for years, but fear made the prison feel like home. People change after losing what they took for granted. People change after losing what they took for granted because absence has a way of teaching what presence could not. When something is always there, always forgiving, always available, always patient, or always waiting, people can begin to treat it as ordinary. They stop noticing the effort. They stop appreciating the consistency. They stop protecting the bond, the opportunity, the health, the peace, or the person who made life easier. This is why some people only become serious when access is gone. They start calling after silence has settled. They start apologizing after someone has emotionally left. They start making effort after patience has expired. They start valuing peace after chaos has cost them too much. Loss becomes the teacher because comfort failed to wake them up. The painful truth is that familiarity can make people careless. They assume there will always be another chance, another conversation, another forgiveness, another open door, another person willing to understand. So they delay gratitude. They postpone effort. They treat blessings like background noise until the room becomes empty. But when what they took for granted disappears, reality becomes loud. They begin to remember every moment they dismissed. They replay the warnings they ignored. They finally understand that what felt common was actually rare. That is when regret begins to sharpen awareness. Still, not every change after loss is true transformation. Sometimes people change only because losing hurts, not because they have become wiser. Real change is proven when they no longer need the threat of absence to value what is present. The deepest lesson is simple but painful. Do not wait for loss to teach value. Appreciate what is still within reach before life turns it into something you can only understand from a distance. People reject truth first, then adjust quietly later. People reject truth first, then adjust quietly later, because truth often feels like an attack before it becomes a lesson. When someone hears something that exposes their weakness, their mistake, their denial, or the part of life they have been avoiding, their first reaction is rarely calm acceptance. They defend themselves, they explain too much, they laugh it off, they change the subject. Sometimes they even attack the person who said it. Not because the truth is wrong, but because it touched something they were not emotionally ready to face. Human beings protect the stories that make them feel safe. A person can stay loyal to a belief, a relationship, a habit, or a version of themselves that is quietly damaging them simply because it feels familiar. So when truth enters, it does not only challenge their opinion, it challenges their identity. It says, maybe the thing you have been defending is the same thing keeping you stuck. That is why people often reject advice, warnings, feedback, and obvious signs at first. But the strange part is this: even after rejecting the truth, people often begin to change. They may act like your words meant nothing, but later they start observing themselves. They may dismiss you in public, then replay your words in private. They may deny the truth emotionally, while quietly adjusting to it mentally. This is why truth does not always need an immediate reaction to be powerful. Sometimes, the deepest truths do not win through arguments. They sit quietly inside a person until pride becomes tired, denial becomes expensive, and reality becomes too loud to ignore. People fear change because it kills an old identity. People fear change because it does not only ask them to do something new, it asks them to stop being someone old. That is the part most people never admit. They say they are afraid of failing, starting over, being judged, losing comfort, or making the wrong decision. But underneath all of that is a deeper fear. Who will I be if I no longer live the way I used to live? Every habit, even a harmful one, gives a person an identity. The angry person knows how to live as the angry one. The overgiver knows how to live as the needed one. The procrastinator knows how to live as the one who will start someday. The person stuck in pain knows how to live as the wounded one. Even when these identities hurt, they feel familiar, and familiarity can feel safer than freedom. This is why people often stay in places, patterns, relationships, and behaviors that clearly drain them. Change would force them to meet a version of themselves they have not practiced becoming yet. It would mean losing the excuses, the sympathy, the predictable pain, and the old story that explained everything. A person may want a better life, but still grieve the self they must leave behind to receive it. That grief can look like laziness, confusion, fear, anger, or delay. They are not always avoiding progress. Sometimes they are mourning an identity that once protected them. This is why real change feels uncomfortable before it feels powerful. It is not just growth. It is a quiet death of who you were before life allows you to become who you are ready to be. Pain feels safer when it has a story. Pain feels safer when it has a story because the human mind does not only suffer from what happened, it suffers more when it cannot explain why it happened. A person can survive disappointment, betrayal, rejection, failure, or loss, but what often breaks them deeper is the unanswered question behind it. Why did this happen to me? Why did they treat me that way? What does this say about my worth? So the mind begins to build a story, not always because the story is true, but because it gives the pain a shape. This is why people sometimes hold tightly to painful explanations. They may tell themselves they were not good enough, they were too trusting, they were cursed, they always lose, or people always leave. These stories hurt, but they also create a strange kind of order. The pain no longer feels random. It now has a reason, a pattern, a name. And to the mind, even a painful explanation can feel safer than no explanation at all. The danger is that some stories do not heal the wound, they protect it. A person can become loyal to a version of pain that keeps them trapped because letting go of the story would mean facing uncertainty again. It would mean admitting that not everything had a clean reason, not everyone gives closure, and not every wound can be understood before it is released. That is why people sometimes defend the same story that is hurting them. Without it, they would have to stand in the raw truth of what happened. Pain with a story feels controlled. Pain without a story feels like falling. But healing often begins when a person stops needing the story to make the pain feel safe.